Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. This drives me nuts because the screen is black. It's supposed to be white, but there we go. There we go. For some reason, things change. Black is just too dark and scary. So anyway, uh, for those of you who are confused, yes, it's 8 o'clock. Tiny asked if we could do a little out. What LA traffic is that bad?
I have to get an IV every Thursday, and coming back from the hospital, it's just the worst time to be in traffic. And it can be a 35-minute drive, or it can be an hour and 35 minutes. And I figured if I said okay to 4 o'clock my time, 7 o'clock your time, and then that will be the day that the traffic was the worst. So I just figured give myself an extra hour. I'll get home. I'll get myself some tea. I'll be able
Good.
to.
That's good because normally I go to bed at 9:30 when I'm working. So this you know.
I'm keeping you up late.
Yeah, so, but this is fine because I don't go back to work till Monday, and of course I was sitting in this chair all week because I had to. Every 5 years I have to do these certifications to work at the airport, and I didn't realize it was 5 years. So, like, okay, you're coming back on Monday, and they're like, oh, your certifications are expired, and it's 40 hours altogether.
Oh.
Normally they tell you, it's 50% their problem, but ultimately I should have been checking my cards. So I was like, oh my God, they expired in November. So I just had to do it. So I from Friday night to Tuesday, I did nothing. And sitting in this chair for 18 hours a day, I threw my back out sitting in a chair. So
those chairs, a lot of the chairs that everyone has, they look like gamer chairs. They look really cool. They look like they should be comfortable. But I hear a lot of people saying what you're saying, like after 10 hours in the chair. Whatever. That's why I got me a reclining soft sofa chair.
I shouldn't be sitting in a chair for 18 hours in the stretch either, but I just wanted to finish. I wanted to finish, so I could tell my job on Friday, because if I finished Friday night, there's going to be nobody in the office. You know what I mean? So I wanted to finish. So that's anyway. So, by the way, that was a huge cat that just crawled out of your ceiling.
This is her cat tree condo thing. She's got little cubby holes here and here, and it goes all the way up almost to the ceiling because she's a tree cat. Did you know that there's a difference between tree cats and bush cats? I did not know this until we got a tree cat.
What's the difference now? You got to tell me.
Bush cats like to hide and stuff, but they like to stay normally around the low to the ground. Tree cats will climb anything if they don't have something designed for them to climb. And our house is full of bookshelves. And that cat, we got her a really good tree that she likes. So she was not trying to climb the bookshelves, or she was like trying to jump towards the ceiling at one point. It was like, okay, this is not normal. What's wrong with my cat?
Is it, but different species of cats, or is it just a personality?
I think it's a personality trait. It could be like some species, but like I know a lot of Siamese cats like really like water, but not all Siamese cats like water, and some other random cats like water. So I think it's a personality trait thing.
Okay, because we had 3 cats. One they're getting old. One died, and now we're down to 2. But they're definitely bush cats. My wife will set up, like, she calls it blanket fort. She'll on the couch, she'll put the pillows up, and they fight to get in there. But we had what you have behind you, like a big. They never used it. It was like $300. We put it in the corner because we always read cats like to have multiple levels. They never, like, when we first got it, they ran up and they sat in it, and that was the end of it. They never used it. But they go behind the bed, they go under the bed. They stay low to the ground and hide. So I guess they're bush cats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we get some strays outside. They literally hide in the bushes all day long. And I got them.
The cat we had before, the cat I have right now, the black cat you just saw, that was Katsumi, which is a Japanese name that means dark victory, because I was at a super anime like place when I got her. The cat we had before, we actually got from a shelter, and she already had a name that she responded to, so we just kept it, and that was Shay Shay, which means thank you in Chinese, which I always thought was funny.
Okay.
Shay Shay was a bush cat. Like we gave her the one that like stopped like here, and she was really happy with it. She loved it. It was great. She died right around the beginning of the pandemic, and we weren't ready to get another cat, and there was the pandemic and everything. And so we finally got another cat. We got a kitten. We got Katsumi. and she would crawl up Shay Shay's tower, and then she'd be like jumping, trying to reach the little tiny ledge like that around the window. Like there's no way she could hold on to it or sit on it or anything, but she would go for it. And we were like, we have to get her a bigger tree. Well, first I took her to the vet and said, what is wrong with my cat?
Well,
She's climbing all these things. She's doing all this stuff that none of my other cats have ever done. And they're like, oh, she's just a tree cat. Like they just blase, whatever.
I had a bunch of cats in college too, and they were like regular cats. They would, you know, rub on each other and hang out with each other, play with each. These 3 cats we got from the same litter. There was a litter of 4 cats. By the time we got there, one was gone, and I told my wife, you pick one and I pick one. And then the third one was just, I was like, grab that one. We're not going to leave that cat. But they would hang out in different rooms. They did not interact with each other from kittens. Like, you know, we brought them home in a box. And as soon as one went into the bedroom, one went into the guest room, and like they swatted each other. They're 22 years old. They still swatted each other. They don't want to be near each other. Like, and then there's 2 feral cats. When we bought the house, there was just this feral cat, beautiful. I forget what it is, a teddy bear cat or something like that. Just beautiful cat, fixed already. Its ears were snipped, and the woman who was living in the house, she's like, "Will you take care of it?" My wife immediately fell in love. They gave us a closet full of food, so by the time that food ran out, my wife was in love with that cat. Like she worries if it doesn't. Long story short, it was living by itself, and then another cat showed up. They snuggle. They love each other. They both hang out in the little box that we built for them. You know, it's funny, every morning they come stretching out with straw in there. But the cats that were born together have nothing to do with each other.
I mean, you could talk to any cat expert and they'll give you all this information. But the truth of the matter is cats, just like humans and most other animals, have their own personalities. Yes. There's things that most of them do, but not all of them. And there's always going to be a few, and they're cats. They like to be contrary.
Yeah, I've had 6 cats now in my life, and each one of them had a unique, different personality. Master Hobo says at least they aren't evil like their dogs are. I'm a dog person. I only got a cat because when I lived in college, I wanted a pet, but I was broke, and cats are cheaper than dogs, so I just got a cat. Plus, my girlfriend at the time, her mom's cat had kittens, so it just worked out. But I want a dog, and I want a big dog. I want like a Mastiff. I want like a Tibetan Mastiff kind of dog.
Oh, wow.
Big freaking dog.
That dog's as big as I am.
Right. But I don't want to, I got to build a fence, and then when I got to work on my backyard. I got to fix up the backyard. Dogs will work.
Dogs are work. And this thing wasn't too expensive. I mean, cats, you need a cat tree and a couple toys and the food, and that's about it. A litter box. But dogs, if you really want them to stay healthy, you've got to give them stuff to run on and play with and do all sorts of things. And most importantly, you have to take them for walkies.
Yeah.
And between living in a tiny apartment in New York City to moving to a tiny apartment in California, there wasn't really room for a dog. And I've been so sick for so long that it was like the idea of having the responsibility to do walkies is just not happening.
So you're a New Yorker originally?
I'm originally a New Yorker. I went to school in Texas for 5 years, so I am an Aggie, Texas A&M.
Where in New York did you grow
up? The city and Westchester, which is about 45 minutes north of the city. So my parents separated when I was about 4.5, and my mom and I were living in Harlem, just the edge of the Upper East Side. And my grandmother calls her up and goes, I pay the highest school taxes in the entire country, and there is no one in this household going to school here. Move home. So my mom picks me up and we moved back to where she grew up. So I actually went to the same elementary school, middle school, and high school as my mother.
Right by the X-Men mansion. So you should have went to...
Actually, yes. Actually, the mansion they used for the X-Men mansion is the Reader's Digest mansion, which is right next to my high school. And when I went to see the X-Men when it first came out, I was in a theater right near there, and the scene came in. The entire theater erupted. It was like,
that's us. I guess this is a comic book channel after all, but this one of the things that I do like, growing up in New York, I grew up in Long Island. I worked in Manhattan for a couple of decades. I was like obsessed with the real life location of Marvel, place like the Avengers Mansion is the Fripp Museum the
Mhm.
Frick Mansion and Museum. And it was funny because I was walking by it. You know, I would leave my job and I was walking to the train, and I would look at it. You can't help, and I'm like, this looks so familiar. And I just figured, and then it literally is what Jack Kirby drew as the Avengers Mansion.
As the original Avengers Mansion was the Frick Museum, and it's funny, my mom used to take me to the Frick Museum. Like when I was living in Westchester, but I spent a lot of time in the city. I was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art whenever I could. I loved it's my favorite museum in the whole world. And other stuff, but my mom would took me to the Frick, and we went to something that was connected to Frick and JP Morgan. And I'm sitting there in this building going, this feels familiar. But I mean, I'd read some of the old Avengers comics that my uncle had, but more modern Avengers comics had them in like a high rise or something at that point. So like, why is it so familiar? And then I was with my uncle like a couple of years later, and he was going through his old comics, and I went, wait, I've been in that building. What? That's the Frick building. That's the Frick building.
I worked in 40 East 40th Street. You know,
okay.
40, and it was originally called the Mercantile Building.
Mm-hmm.
Briefly, in like 1910, I'm sure I'm getting the years wrong. It was the tallest building in the world. Briefly,
that does not surprise me. The early 1900s, where there were a lot of competitions for. Once the elevator was proven to be safe,
right?
Just the high rise race, I guess.
But you could look up the Mercantile Building. I worked in that building for like for about 4 years, and the contract to that building, we would go to other buildings, and one of them was Marvel Comics and things like that. But anyway, I didn't know while I was working there. I didn't know until after I left that building was the address of the Baxter Building, and because Marvel Comics was in that building. But before, when I was working there, Marvel Comics was on Park Avenue. But at Marvel Comics,
that's so cool.
I shouldn't say originally. At one point, was located in that building, and then it was used as the. So I was working in the Baxter Building. You know,
that is so cool.
The building looked, I was like, oh, wow, you know, right by Bryant Park. You know,
yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And then the ultimate comic book real life experience for me was my coworker. I told the story a million times, but my coworker lives, well, he's gone now, but lived next door to John Romita Sr., you know, and for 20 years, you know, he was just the kind old guy that lived next door, and he would shovel his walk, you know, once John Romita Jr. moved away. And he was like, he always knew he drew comic books, and he was like, is he a big deal? I was like, oh my God. So my coworker got me to go, and we sat down and
oh, that's really cool.
This is Peter Parker's house. Like, he drew his house. So I was in Peter Parker's house, you know, I'm not going to say the town it is, but because his wife, you know, Mrs. Romita still lives there, but we were in his office where he drew Spider-Man. He drew that room in Spider-Man comic books a lot. It's like the parlor when you first walk into Aunt May's house. I'm like, wow, I'm in Aunt May's house. You know, that's pretty cool.
That really is crazy.
Yeah.
I always thought it was interesting how Marvel did real actual locations and real names, whereas DC decided to do the fictional version of them. Whereas you've got Metropolis, Gotham, Central City, Star City for LA.
Yeah, Opal City, Midwest, Mid City, I think it's called, and then.
And I'm convinced that Bloodhaven has got to be New Haven. It's got to be New Jersey. I'm convinced that Bloodhaven is New Jersey.
Yeah, it's funny because that's like been an eternal debate. Like, how can Metropolis and Gotham both be New York City? So a lot of people say that Gotham City is in New Jersey, and it just.
I don't think Gotham is in New Jersey. I think Bloodhaven is New Jersey, like just right across the river, right across. Like Dick Grayson was like, I'm not gonna be Robin anymore. I'm gonna go do my own thing across the river. So if you need me, I'll be right there.
I can accept Bloodhaven as like Newark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it just seems like.
And if you read the way they talk about it, it's New Jersey. It's definitely Newark.
Chuck Dixon just said that it was. He actually gave. He actually gave a name of the city because he created Bloodhaven.
Yeah.
And Menowac, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. He says it's a little town. It doesn't even have an exit on the highway. And he says that is the model for Bloodhaven. He goes, it's the city that made every wrong decision. It became the asbestos capital of the world. You know, things like in real life, you know, but I'm sure I'm mispronouncing the name. Yeah. So
my dad's family's from little tiny somewhere in Pennsylvania, so I could see that.
so what is see that bothers because you know
Metropolis is supposed to be New York and Gotham is supposed to be New York, but to me it was always like different stages of New York. Gotham was the old New York of the 30s, and Metropolis was like the New York of the modern day. But that was 25 years ago. I would never consider New York Metropolis anymore today.
The thing about DC Comics, and I don't know if Marcus is going to pop in the chat. He always corrects me when I make errors. But, DC Comics was not just one monolith at the time. There was national periodicals. There was, I forget the name of the other, but there were a bunch of different companies within one company. And Metropolis was New York. That was where Superman lived. Yeah. And Gotham City was New York. That's where Batman lived, and then later on, because there was no continuity in DC, which is one of the things I didn't like about DC until really Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then they started to realize there was problems, how could both, and I think it was John Byrne. I forget it was John Byrne and somebody else, but they basically said Metropolis is Manhattan during the day and Gotham City is Manhattan at night.
Okay, then, I can see that too.
Yeah, and then also, another person
Yonkers, which is just north of the Bronx, has a whole bunch of big, solid rock formation that people build houses on, and that almost all definitely have caves underneath. So I know exactly where Batman was living.
Oh yeah,
he was totally in Yonkers.
Yeah, Batman, like where you went to school. Yeah, that I was working on the George Washington Bridge. It goes from the top of northern Manhattan, part of Manhattan people forget about, by Mother Cabrini Church and everything like that.
I love Mother Cabrini. Because my cousin went there. She went to the Mother Cabrini High School, Catholic high school, and she said when you're bad, they make you sit in the chapel with the bones of Mother Cabrini.
It's not the bones; it's the body. It's a body.
Yeah,
I've seen it. And they use it as the altar. So I worked up there. I took even before I was a teacher. Even before I was an electrician. I took a class up there, and and I was like, I gotta go see the body. It's going on. So I was able to just walk right up and look at it. But to answer your question, there's rock formations and caves. Yeah. I think that's where the and I know I'm going to say this word wrong, but the stables are. What is it called? But there was a DC comic called The Crusader, who it's going to drive me nuts. But San Francisco has a similar situation with the same name, and it's going to drive me nuts. But it's like an old Spanish. It's like, I think it's an old Spanish or maybe Dutch. It's going to 2 seconds after we're done talking, I'm going to remember the name of it. But it's an old fort where horses came from, and then this Crusader would ride out on his knight from this area.
Okay.
But there's this little cool section of Manhattan that people just forget about, all the way up on the top, because it's it's past Harlem, it's past Spanish Harlem, and
the North Bronx is not the same as the South Bronx. The North Bronx has all sorts of interesting stuff going on.
North Bronx is gorgeous.
Yeah,
North Bronx is gorgeous. Yeah, my buddy went to Manhattan College in the Bronx, which is every stand-up comedian, they would have stand-up comedians. And their opening joke is, "It's great to be here in Manhattan College in the Bronx. I was just in Queens College in Brooklyn." And
yeah,
like, oh, we've heard it before. But right by the Van Cortlandt Park area, which I don't know if you've ever walked through Van Cortlandt Park area. Me and my friends did things we shouldn't be doing. And wandered.
When I was younger, you weren't supposed to go into those parks at night, and I never really went back when I was older.
Yeah, we would drink in the Terminal Bar, which looks like every Frank Miller CD bar. There's literally a train station above in the Bronx. You come down this, and every blue collar worker on their way home goes in that bar. So we would be college. Well, I didn't at this point. This was before I went to college. I started college late. He was in college. We'd go to this bar, drink with the blue collar guys, and then wander through Van Cortlandt Park at night. But there's an abandoned train station. It's really cool because all of a sudden you're on tracks and they're all grown over. And there's like a tunnel and an old rusty old. It's like you're wandering into Narnia. It's really cool. And then you got to leave because there's gangs. What are you doing? What you doing here? I say, you're like, all right, it's cool. We're just
Hence the not me going in at night when I was young.
Yeah. Well, it's different when you're a 4'2" girl.
Hey, 5'2", 5'2".
5'2". Every New Yorker is Batman. Yeah. What I was going to say about Gotham City is when I worked down in South Ferry, which is about as south in Manhattan as you could possibly get. It's right by the ferry that will take you to the Statue of Liberty.
Yep.
The subcaps, the hub, the sub, whatever they're called.
The subway grates?
The subway, the sewer caps.
Sewer grates. They're called sewer grates.
They actually say Gotham on them.
Yeah, no, they do.
Yeah, they say Gotham, and it's all cobblestone, and and the buildings are smaller. There's a couple of skyscrapers, that they put downtown that they built on the landfill when they made the Twin Towers. They actually extended Manhattan over, and then they let that settle for a couple of years, and then they built skyscrapers on it. But the original, like Wall Street there, it's small. It looks like what you'd see Gotham City.
If you go down there, there's a small park. I'm forgetting the name of it. There's a small park that has a wrought iron fence around it. That is a park where George Washington stood to talk to people right after the end of the Revolution.
Oh, Battery Park?
It's not Battery Park. It's a little tiny park down by Wall Street. I can never remember the name of it.
Yes.
But it's this little piece of green that's like, why is this here with everything that got built up around it? It's like, because George Washington gave a speech right here, so we don't get to get rid of this green.
I know it, and there's a statue of George Washington right by it. Yeah, I can't think of the name of it. The Gothel. Is that the name of the place that the state is the Gothels? Is that what it's called? I don't know. It's gonna drive me nuts until I remember the name of this place where the horses are. But you could go there now, and there's still horses there. The horse cops. That's where they come from, up there. At Battery Park, I'll always remember Battery Park. I was an apprentice electrician, just sitting on a bench on a beautiful day, eating a sandwich. And I look up and Iggy Pop was just walking. Oh, hi, Iggy. And Iggy just holds up because I'm eating a sandwich, and then just keeps on walking. So I got that. That's my Iggy Pop eating a sandwich story.
That is one of the things about living in New York. Like, you do see random people who are like big in places that you don't necessarily expect it. I always laugh whenever anyone freaks out that Keanu Reeves rides the subway.
Right. Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day who was the most famous person I ever met, and I totally blanked this out. But I went to a bar. It was in Soho, and I was supposed to meet one of my friends, and we got totally mixed up. My friend Sean, the one who went to Minute College, he went to another bar, and I went to another bar, and we waited for each other. So we, ended up drinking alone. He ended up drinking alone.
The world before cell phones.
Yeah, this was years before cell phones. So I'm just sitting in the bar, and I turn around, and Robert De Niro is right here. So I just go, hey, I'm drunk, and I'll talk to anybody. So he just looks at me, and he goes, who do you know? And I go, you. And then he just went, oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And then just turned around and continued his conversation. But that always bothered me. Who do you know? Not, hey, how you doing? Hey, what's going on? You're only worth talking to if you know somebody.
Yeah.
It always bothered me. I should have just started listing insane names. I know. If I was more savvy, if I knew at the time, I should have said Harvey Weinstein. I know Harvey Weinstein, and watch him kiss my ass or something.
My mom is very happy. She got to meet and talk to Curtis Sliwa on the subway.
I've seen him a million. Yeah, I would see him a few times. And I go,
no. Her favorite one was we were there. There's a store in Grand Central that. Times Square. Times Square. Times Square. It's a big record store that also has like a movie theater or something in the basement.
Okay.
And it's got this giant escalator that you go down, and it's very open, so you can see anyone on the escalator. And we were going down, and my mom turns around, and then she goes, ah! And she's like waving, and I turn around, I don't see anything. It's like, turns out as we were going down, Antonio Banderas was going up, and my mom saw him and kind of waved at him, and he smiled at her, and she's like,
that's cool. Yeah, I walking around by when I was at that 40 East, lunchtime, and then after work, there was Forbidden Planet, and there was what's the other one? Jim Henley's Universe. There was a lot of good comic book stores around there, so I'd go around to the comic book store and stuff. And Curtis Sliwa was always walking around there.
Oh yeah.
And I would go, hey Curtis, remember me? And he was, oh yeah. Like he didn't. He was always nice. So when I was like, hey Curtis, I voted for you, and he goes, that's because you're smart. So
that sounds exactly like what he would say too.
Yeah, that's because you're smart. Yeah. So
my favorite celebrity random notes never actually happened to me or anyone I know personally, but supposedly, Bill Murray has a habit of messing with random people.
Yeah.
And the brother or sister of a friend of mine was like, she was sitting at McDonald's eating French fries, and Bill Murray literally walked up to her, stole a French fry, dipped it in the ketchup, put it in his mouth, and said, "No one will ever believe you," and walked away.
Yeah. My uncle was flying to Ireland, and he's grumpy flyer, and he sat next to Bill Murray. And he said they just talked like fast friends the whole flight. And he said he saw him in Ireland, and he's like, "Hey, Joe," and he called him over.
That's so cool.
My Uncle Joe is just a charming Irish guy. He's just like this handsome. He looks like a leprechaun. You know what I mean? When you say old Irishman, that so it's everybody. Uncle Joe.
Bill Murray also supposedly was at a bar somewhere in the Lower West Side, and he basically told the bartender to leave, got behind the bar, and served everyone whatever they wanted as long as it was tequila.
That's funny. That's funny. I'm trying to think. When I was working at a bar in Albuquerque, I'm cooking, and I'm like, I was the guy in the back making fries and steaks and burgers, stuff like that. And I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And it's like a dinner rush. And I'm like, oh God. So I just called one of the managers over. I said, I'm sorry, but and he was just like, he goes, I could see it in your face. So he's like, go. So I ran into the bathroom, like take my apron off, like kicking the door, taking care of business. And I come back all relaxed. And he's like, oh, here's a note from Keith Richards. And I'm like, okay, that's, I like the Rolling Stones. Yeah, I don't get where you go. He goes, no, it's a note from Keith Richards. I'm like, okay, it's a note. I'm thinking he's doing it because we all play jokes on each other. And it just said, nice wings. And I'm like, okay. So I'm waiting for the punchline. He goes, no, Keith Richards came back to thank you for the wings. And you were in the bathroom. I'm like, okay, that, you're not too funny. This manager, Jason, wasn't funny. Yeah. So I'm just thinking it's a non-funny joke by Jason. All right, congratulations, you're trying to be funny, but and I'm just going to work, and everybody's like, oh, did you see Keith Richards? Did you see Keith Richards? And I'm like, wow, Jason's really trying hard to make that. That ain't going to happen, Jason. You know what I mean? But apparently, I made him wings right before I almost shit my pants. Ran into the bathroom, and he came back to say nice wings, and I wasn't there. So I almost met Keith Richards.
My dad was a roadie. He's a lighting director. He also ended up doing a bunch of other stuff, but he was a roadie with the Rolling Stones, the Grateful Dead, David Bowie. He and my mom both worked on one of the music videos for Billy Idol. And my dad decided to throw his hat in the ring for the 20th anniversary concert tour that the Stones did back in the 90s or something like that. And whoever hired him didn't look at his entire resume because didn't see that he used to work with them.
Yeah.
So they just hired him as like a really good guy with a good resume. And he gets on the headset and he starts making comments, asking questions, saying names, and everyone's going, who the fuck is it? How does this person know all these? Like, they're all freaking out because he was with them when they were all making all their mistakes and having all the crazy stories when they were younger.
That's cool. Oh, so anyway, you did cosplay for a long time, right?
I do cosplay on and off whenever I have the energy and a chance to it. I tend to do, especially these days, I tend to do more original characters, but okay. I also do other like known characters as well. It's a lot of fun, and it's something I can do with my mom. She's an ex-costume designer. She was cool. And so. And it's like for us, Halloween was always a huge holiday. My mom jokes when I was younger, I would get so frustrated because the costumes we had were so complex that I supposedly I used to yell at her and go, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to wear a sheet, nothing else. Like I'm just going to be a ghost. I'm so tired of this. I mean, I literally have little tiny white dot scars all over my body from straight pins for things and stuff.
See, I always loved Halloween, and I remember in kindergarten I wanted to be the Hulk. So my mom's like, okay, we'll be the Hulk. And we went to the store and she bought a Hulk costume. Now, I don't know your age. I'm not going to ask your age, but
I'm 40. I don't mind saying it.
Okay, back in the 70s, store-bought costumes were these vinyl. They smelled like you open up the box, they're like, but they were vinyl plastic suits.
Yeah.
And it was purple vinyl pants. And then the chest piece said Hulk on it. And then it had a picture of the Hulk. And then a green mask with a rubber band string that instantly snapped. And it had like a little mouth. And you're sticking your tongue through it and it hurt your tongue. You know, it was like sharp. And I'm like, this isn't what the Hulk looks like.
No.
The Hulk doesn't wear a shirt. You know, the Hulk doesn't have the word Hulk written on his chest. And then, like on an I was so she painted me green. But the thing is, I'm a chubby little kid freezing, you know, where I didn't have muscles or anything like that. So like I pictured myself, I was going to be all muscular. So here I am with this chubby little kid, sickly green. That's, you know, this patch is darker than this patch. And, you know, and I didn't want to go outside the house. They dyed pants purple for me. I'm like, I'm not wearing this. I'm not going to be walking around with no shirt, you know?
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Like Halloween in New York is different than Halloween in certain other places because you have to be able to deal with the weather. I mean, it snows sometimes by Halloween where we are.
Yeah, I remember a few times it was snowing as a kid, and that sucked too because I finally got a good Superman costume one year, and now I'm wearing a winter coat over it. You know, I'm like, this sucks.
Okay,
this sucks.
One year my mom got a deal on these amazing iridescent purple, green, blue feather things, and we were trying to figure out something to do. So she made this amazing bird costume, and she went and talked to one of her old professors who like does professional costumes on Broadway and for movies and stuff. He said, what makes a bird look like a bird is the wings need to be much, much longer than the body, or as long as the body. Like, and so she made this amazing costume that had poles, and I had poles that I had to hold so that my wings would go out and stuff. And it was beautiful. Except with the poles, I couldn't hold a basket. So someone else had to come with me and hold the basket because I couldn't do it.
Oh,
and she didn't fully finish that one, and I went out with straight pins in my costume. That was not fun.
Did you take pictures of all those costumes?
We took pictures of them. We're pretty sure they're in my mom's storeroom that's still back in New York that we still pay for. That has so much stuff from our old life.
Oh, really? You got a storage unit full of stuff?
Yep.
How much? I was, when I lived in Queens, I had a storage unit that was all my comics. It was $500 a month. So I was paying $500 a month for my comic collection. And I would wake up in the middle of the night. I got to pay my storage unit because all I could think of was somebody who's going to bid $40 and take away my, you know,
entire collection. Yeah.
And my comic collection was in Atlantic Self Storage in Baldwin, Long Island, and it's right on the water. And when I went there, the guy showed me. I said, "No, I want to be on the second floor." And he goes, "Why?" I said, "Because it's only a matter of time before there's a flood." And I'll never forget the guy. If it was like the most comical eye roll I've ever seen. It was like, you know, like a silent movie guy couldn't have rolled his eyes worse than this guy. And I was, believe it or not, I lose my temper very easily. Just ask my wife, and I was like livid. So we went upstairs. He was like, "There, we're upstairs now." And I put the storage unit in there. I built shelves. I was there for 14 years. The storage unit went from like $60 a month to $500 a month in those 15 years that I was there. And every once a month or so, I'd whenever I filled up a long box with comics, my wife and I would drive out to the storage, and I would spend all day sorting. And it was fun because it was Sunday. My wife and I spent. You opened up the storage unit. I had a lounge chair that my wife sat in a lounge chair.
Nice.
And I had a little table so I didn't have to bend over, you know, sort the comics. And then we would go out to dinner. So it was like she and they played like an oldie station, so she liked the music, you know. But anyway, long story short, Sandy happened.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I knew
so
it was
Sandy. My brother lives 2 blocks away. His house was underwater. My sister lives 3 blocks away. Nothing. It's unbelievable. It's so chaotic the way it happened. But you know, so I call up the storage unit and nobody's answering. And I'm just getting like, okay, all right, you know, like I'm like I don't have. I don't. Not only do I not have a comic book collection, but it's like it would be one thing if I sold it all and had something to save for, but it's like it's ruined. It's gone. It's garbage. They're just gonna. So after about 3 weeks, they finally answered the phone, and the guy's like, "Yeah, you want to come down here because we literally got a backhoe just scooping garbage out, And my niece, she was just like, she said she was crying because she had a storage unit and she just remembers her wedding dress was on.
Oh no!
Just thrown away. So I was just like, oh God. So I was like, oh, he goes, what's your storage unit? And I was like, 218. Oh, second floor is fine. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, second floor is fine. So like, I just drove down, and driving through Baldwin, there's literally like beds in the road, house, like things. Sandy was bad. There was things floating in the streets. So you're driving, and then the salt water was like 3 weeks later, the roads were all like potholes and everything. It was like driving through a war zone. And then I get there and there's literally a backhoe just picking up garbage and throwing it in dumpsters. And I'm like, oh man. So I walk in and there's the eye roll guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, remember me? And he's like, what? I go, it's only a matter of time before there's a flood. And then I went like, rolled my eyes like, you probably didn't remember me or whatever. But I was just like, that's how petty I am. And the joke that I always tell people, like, it stunk like sewage on the ground floor. There was cable. I don't know why, but there was cables. There was garbage. Things were. And then the elevator didn't work. And I always say this, like, I went upstairs. There was like a unicorn ran by and there was a butterfly. Like upstairs was immaculate. So
unicorn and a butterfly. I like that.
I was just like, if I had taken that storage unit, that would have been it. I would have no channel. I would be talking to you because, I probably would just be like, I'm gonna watch football now. That's gonna be what because if I lost my collection, I'm done. I'm not starting over again.
All right, I will hold on. If you let me share a screen real quick.
Sure.
Hold on, where there is.
Do you know Brian Bow?
That name sounds very familiar.
He does a comic called Wolf and Betsy.
Oh, okay.
And he makes horror comics. As much as I know about comic books, he knows horror movies stuff. He made a video of every Halloween of his life, except for like 2 years. And it's just a documentary of this insane lunatic making these elaborate costumes. It's so cool. So when you said Halloween,
so that was my version of She-Hulk.
You know who you look like in that picture besides She-Hulk? From Deep Space Nine, Kira.
Okay. I
I
have the short hair. I should do a Kira cosplay at some point.
You should. Yeah, you can pull it off. Who's he?
He was in Warehouse 13 and something else. I can't remember the actor's name.
Yeah, he looks familiar.
Yeah, he was very nice. I will say I generally tend to have very good interactions with most of the blank with most of the celebrities I've had the chance to meet. And cool. I generally assume at least part of it is the wheelchair.
So I got to ask, you ever do Oracle?
I did an Oracle. It wasn't as good as I would have liked. And it wasn't quite obvious it was Oracle, but 1 or 2 people caught it. I mean, someone was like I wore a black shirt and my pants, and I had like, it looks sort of like there could be a computer by on my wheelchair thing, but
you got to have the Eskrima sticks,
Yeah, I didn't have the red wig. I didn't have the right red wig, so
you gotta have like comically red, like almost like Ronald McDonald red with that.
Or actually, I mean, if you look up, there's a lot of pictures of Oracle where she's sitting at her desk and she's wearing like a Batman t-shirt.
Yeah, that would have been good. Yeah, my best costume. Well, one day, just as a joke, I said to my sister, she goes, what are you going to be for Halloween? My sister loves Halloween. And she moved to a town in New Jersey that had like a Halloween fair. It lasted like the week of Halloween. And we would go, the Witch's Ball, they called it. And it was like everybody was in costume. She loved it. So like she gets excited. Halloween's coming. So I as a joke, I said, I'm going to dress up as Gene Shalit. You're a New Yorker. You got to know Gene Shalit, right?
The name sounds familiar, but I'm blanking on
his face. He's an old movie reviewer, and he's like,
oh, okay.
Stereotypically Jewish. He's got that New York
mustache.
Yeah, the big mustache. From the early '70s, and And she was like, oh, so every year she'd be like, are you going to dress up as Jean Shalit? You're going to dress up as Jean Shalit? Well, my niece got a job as a makeup artist for movies. So I went to my niece's house. I said, I don't care what you do. You got to make me look like Jean Shalit. So I actually had to shave my beard. She, makeup on. She got this like mask and put putty on my nose. I got to find the picture, but I looked exactly like Jean Shalit. And I got like an old tweed jacket with patches on the elbows.
That's really cool.
I just knocked on her door and I was like, "Is this a splessing?" I forget what I said, but I rehearsed this like speech. She goes, "Oh my God, you're Jean Shalit!" She like fell down. She was so excited. She almost like
that's great.
Yeah, Halloween is like Christmas to some people. Yeah.
Well, I always make a joke that my favorite
get up. Yes, I'll find it and I'll post it.
I always make jokes that my favorite religious holidays and my favorite secular holidays are basically the same thing. My favorite religious holidays are Passover and Purim, and my favorite secular holidays are Thanksgiving and Halloween. So twice a year, I get to sit down with a meal and family and say what I am grateful for, and twice a year, I get to dress up and get drunk.
Isn't Purim? Don't they dress up? Isn't it like a dress up holiday? And you dress up like a biblical character, or I guess
you can dress up as anything.
I thought it was like a religion, like you had to dress up.
Hold on. I'm going to find you the funniest, famous Purim picture I've ever seen in my life. But you want me to find it? No, I can get it real quick. But no, Purim, you can dress up as characters from the story or other biblical characters, but really it's just become a time to dress up in general. And there's not for the kids. Kids get candy.
It's me as Jean Shalit before I put on my full costume. That was just like the makeup test. That's the only picture. I'll make it big, and that's my niece as. Oh
my God, you look like him.
Yeah, I didn't.
That's crazy. You really do look like you don't look like you. You look like him.
And it's funny because I was walking around the witch's ball Halloween, and I wasn't interacting with people, and some guy looks at me and goes, oh my God. And he pulls over another guy. That guy's Jean Shalit. And he went and he got this big bag of candy. And he goes, that's the best costume I've ever seen. Like I was a little kid. He rewarded me with candy. She looked like the Orion girl from Star Trek. Yeah. My niece Madeline looks exactly like Batsy from Wolf and Batsy. I got to get a picture of her over to Brian Bow. She could dress as Batsy.
All right.
Yeah. So it's funny because with this beard, what is the Jewish holiday with the shed?
Oh, Sukkot.
What's it?
Sukkot, when you go and you eat outside at least one meal a day.
Yeah, something like that. Because when I was living in Queens, I'd get off the bus and there would be, there was a lot of Orthodox Jews in the area,
Yeah.
So I'm getting off the bus with my beard. And guys, hey, do you want to pray with me? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll, let's, and I don't speak
Hebrew.
So you
check the love.
The guy's like, you're not Jewish. He goes, I said, I never said I was Jewish. And he goes, oh, why do you want to pray with me? I said, because you asked me to pray. But I guess you look Jewish.
Well, I always feel bad for the Chabad students that are in charge of trying to get people to. So Chabad sends young kids, young men studying to be rabbis and stuff out to help people who aren't very religious learn to pray and do stuff. And so they're always walking around New York with the hats and the coats and the payas and saying like, are you Jewish? Have you ever done tefillin? Asking all these questions. And they're out there on 8th Avenue every October when New York Comic Con comes around. And they're watching these people come past them in costumes and in the weirdest things going, are you anyone Jewish? Or like they're looking at like it's like they're looking for they're looking you in the face like, if can I see through the costume? Do you look maybe just so they just sit there and they go like, any Jews? Any Jews at all?
Look for the guys dressed up as Moon Knight or Ben Grimm, right? Those are the two famous Jewish superheroes.
Oh, hold 1 second. Do you want to tell that story? Sure. My mom has a story she wants to tell you about the funny stuff about that stuff.
Okay.
But I'm trying to find the right picture. I found the wrong. Basically, there's an entire family of like mom, dad, and 7 little kids all dressed up as Santa Claus for Purim.
Who are clearly Orthodox.
Yeah, they're clearly Orthodox Jews, and I don't think they have any idea who the hell Santa Claus is.
my buddy Adam Schwartz. I mean, could you get more Jewish than Adam Schwartz? You know, his mom every year would put up Mrs. Schwartz. She would make matzo ball soup and have us all over. But she put up a Christmas tree, and they celebrated Santa Claus Day. You know, that she loves.
Well, actually, my grandma was really interesting. My grandma used to say that peace on earth, goodwill towards all mankind is more than enough reason to celebrate Christmas. And we had a lot of Christmas traditions. Hold on, let me share this. Present. Share screen.
There it is.
Like, it's the entire family. All the little Santas. And we're pretty sure that they got the costumes on sale and they all matched, so everyone had the same costume and it was perfect for them. And I seriously doubt they have any idea who Santa Claus is.
Santa Schwartz and his little elves.
There you go.
That's what we used to call Adam's dad, Santa Schwartz, because he was a big gray-haired guy, and he would dress up as Santa Claus. He was an actor. He was in a lot of B movies. Hello.
This is Tiny's mom.
Tiny's mom. Queen Esther Day is a part of the Feast of Purim. Okay, I didn't.
You have the Fast of Esther before Purim starts, and then you have the Feast of Esther during Purim.
Okay, I didn't know. I don't know. Even though I grew up in New York, there's still a lot of. I dated a girl that was Orthodox Jewish for like a couple of weeks, and she invited me to her house, and her brothers were full on rabbis with the beards and everything like that. The dad looked like Carmine Ragusa from Laverne and Shirley, if you remember him. But he said, you know, I met him. He invited me in the house. I shook his hand. We talked, and I'll never forget because the mom hid upstairs. Like that's how religious they were. I couldn't see the mother, and I couldn't see the. Well, I saw the daughter. Obviously, we were dating, but it was the first time I was ever in the house, and there was 2 ovens and 2 refrigerators. You know, I was like, what is everything? And it was funny because he told me, he goes, out of all the girls she dated, I like you, and you're not even Jewish. And I said, why? He goes, because you came up, you looked me in the eye, you shook me in the hand. I was like, I know that's what you do. That's what you're supposed to do. Anyway, go ahead. I talk too much.
Oh. No,
not at all.
So do we.
And it's your channel.
Okay. You're the guest.
We like talking to New Yorkers who we can talk over and interrupt, and then everybody talks too much, and we miss that a little bit.
Do you make matzo ball soup?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I was raised extremely reform.
Okay.
No, you were raised non-religious. You were not raised reform.
That's true. I wasn't raised. No, she's right. I was not raised before. I was just raised totally non-religious, basically. But I found out. I was raised with no Jewish ritual. What I found out as an adult is I was actually raised incredibly Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
culturally wise,
we sat at the table. We discussed ethics.
Yeah,
it mattered. You know, so there's all these things about being Jewish that I figured out later. I had a very Jewish upbringing. There just wasn't any temple or rabbis or services or shuls involved, partly because everything around us was reform. And the reform rabbis hated my father.
Oh, okay.
Name was Herman Kahn. He wrote a book called On Thermonuclear War, followed it up with 2 others. And they all thought he was a warmonger. His goal was to prevent nuclear war, but they didn't think so.
Well, the first book on thermonuclear war, he wrote, and they said, this is unthinkable. So his second book was called Thinking About the Unthinkable.
Okay. I lived in my first apartment was in Long Beach, New York. And that's where I met that girl that was Orthodox. And they have a big Orthodox Jewish community. And forgive me if I'm mixing up Hasidic and Orthodox. I don't really know.
No worries.
Most of the Orthodox you would have known would have been Hasidic.
Yep.
Okay, so but they had the curls and everything like that.
Yeah.
The payas. Yep.
And we had the rabbi would come to the door. And again, my roommate was Adam Schwartz. You know, and so and my other roommate was Coptic Christian from Egypt. He used to say, "I'm descended from the pharaohs." I mean, he looked like a Egyptian movie star, you know what I mean? And then Adam Schwartz, and then me. So it was a really weird group of guys. But the rabbi came to the door one day, and I answer, and we sit and we started talking. And I happened to be making breakfast, so we ended up talking philosophy, physics, and everything like that. And he was selling a book on the Kabbalah and
Kabbalah.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. I bought the book. I gave him $10, and I'm like, "But what is this?" He goes, he was really out there. He's like, you could release your astral form. And here I am, a comic book guy, so I was really into this.
Zohar.
Yeah, the Eye of Zohar and Kabbalah, because you could release your astral form and visit yourself in the past and things like that. And I said, okay. I said, I already know the book doesn't work. And he goes, what do you mean? And I go, well, because if I could release my astral form and visit myself in the past, I would manifest right now and tell myself, make sure you read this book and pay attention because it really works. I said, I have not yet manifested, so therefore it doesn't exist. And it was funny because he looked away and then he saw the Coptic Christian cross.
Yeah.
He goes, you're not Jewish. I said, I never said I was. And he got all mad at me. I said, were you enjoying the conversation? Did you enjoy the pancakes? Did you enjoy everything? I
said, but he ate the pancakes you made?
I forget if it was pancakes or eggs.
Well, no, did he eat any of the food? Any of the
whatever
food
I made, and I didn't make bacon. I knew that much. Whatever I made, he ate. Yes.
If he was Orthodox or Hasidic, if he was actually Orthodox or Hasidic, he would never
any food in your house.
He would have said thank you, but no, he never would have eaten a single thing in your house.
Maybe he just drank coffee, or maybe he just drank coffee. I don't know, but whatever I was making, we sat down at the table. It was 30 years ago. I don't remember the exact.
Well, no, it wouldn't surprise me if it was someone who was trying to look Orthodox, who was trying to sell the Zohar to get people into Kabbalah.
I don't know. That was the last time I've ever seen him. I still have that book. It's on my shelf.
And 30 years ago, there was there's some people who appear Orthodox who are very, very into Kabbalah, but they weren't living in Orthodox life. Interesting stuff.
This is interesting to me because I this is all the stuff I don't know.
Yeah, and eventually,
I grew up Irish
in
Catholic.
New York. One of them ended up running something that it turned into pretty much the equivalent of a Jewish cult.
Yeah.
Is that the Lubavitchers?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. We are connected to a bunch of Lubavitchers because we go to Chabad and we deal with that all the time. So we did not mean to be so intense in our no, but no, Lubavitchers are not cultists.
No, the Kabbalah.
Okay, I see. I don't know. I just remember that they had that.
The guy who really started getting people involved in Kabbalah may or may not have started as Orthodox, but in the end, he was running a cult. So this was not something the rest of the Orthodox Jewish community was finding acceptable.
I don't know if Tiny knows this, but I told the story a few times. Back before I met my wife, one of my hobbies was trying to get recruited into cults. And
you just missed it.
Apparently,
and that was my chance. I had one in my house, and
apparently, yeah. All right, so I'm going to tell my story.
Oh, go ahead.
It's fine. It's fine.
I totally forgot you were in South.
So you're very familiar, I'm sure, with the fact that Jews eat a lot of matzah at Passover.
Yes.
And there's a particular type of matzah that's usually round instead of square, and it's called shmura matzah.
Okay.
And it's made in a factory with rabbis watching every single step. So, and it cannot cook for more than 18 minutes, and it can't do this, and it can't do that, and it's everything. What?
What is it?
Shmura matzah.
If you're going to look it up, I think it's SCHMURA, shmura matzah.
Exactly the way it sounds. Exactly the way it sounds.
They actually. She's just isn't even fully correct. The wheat that goes into shmura matzah is watched from the day they plant the seeds.
Oh wow!
So shmura matzah is this really special matzah, and I never thought. We know it's handmade. We know the rabbis are watching the students who are making it. It's this whole thing, and it's very expensive because it's so labor intensive. But we never thought about, you're not born knowing how to do this complex process.
Right.
So I'm on a subway one day, about a week before Passover, and there's a bunch of these, Chabad Hasidic young guys. And one of them says, "Are you Jewish?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Would you like a free box of shmura matzah?" I went, "I'd love one." This stuff's expensive.
Right.
So
it's stereotypically I'm Jewish, so anything free, right?
Anyway, I come home to Jess. I got a free box of shmura matzah. She's great. To Tiny. And free box of shmura matzah. And Passover rolls around. And we have shmura matzah at our friend's house where we always go. Usually I took her to somebody in Queens. who are young Israel, they're Orthodox, but they're modern Orthodox. So they're not doing the payos and stuff, but they keep it absolutely kosher. Kosher home. They're very, very careful when they go out. They only eat in kosher restaurants, all that kind of stuff. They just don't look as obviously Orthodox walking down the street.
That must have been the girl I was dating's father, because like I said, he looked like my Italian uncles. You know,
that's modern Orthodox.
Modern Orthodox. So anyway, though, we have Passover dinner with them. We stay 2 nights like we usually did, and we come home and we go, hey, we got our own shmura matzah. And we open the box and we have a bite. It's like eating leather.
And it was so much. It's like 4 times as thick as it should be.
Well, at one end. The other end was pretty close to shmura matzah. And I looked at her and went, students have to learn how to do this. If they don't technically do it wrong, but it's definitely not saleable, what do you do with it? You send out the boys and they hand out free student shmura matzah on the subways.
It was awful.
It was truly awful. But they wouldn't have given it to us if it didn't pass all of the requirements.
It was
just wasn't edible.
It passed all the requirements except digestible and taste.
And it was funny because a lot of people say, like, they say that about regular matzah even. Like, a lot of people don't like matzah. It's flavorless, so it's like cardboard or whatever. I actually like matzah. I even like shmura matzah. This I did not like.
One of the ways you recognize shmura matzah is very often
it's burnt.
It's basically a circle, but it's not perfectly flat usually. It's very thin, usually thinner than like the store-bought in the box matzah, and there's usually burn marks
because they do it over an actual live flame.
Where I mean, I go to Queens every once in a while. Where can I get some? I'm just curious.
And you can only get it around Passover.
Okay.
But if you're in New York or any other large Jewish area around Passover, any kosher
deli
supermarket or
I mean, even out here in California, there was shmura matzah available at like, $14 for a piece.
Really? Well, maybe I don't want it that much, but
well, it's funny. We have a friend who's
you ask Jewish friends.
Yeah.
I would like to try some shmura matzah, and I'd like to see what a shmura matzah looks like. I heard about it. Yeah, and around Passover, someone will say, we'll show you some shmura matzah and give you a taste.
In Flushing intersection, all the you get off one bus and and it's right in the middle of a very Hasidic Jewish community.
Yeah.
And I would stop and I would go into the deli because I like that Jewish coarse mustard.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of these brands in the regular supermarkets, and it's for every time I walked in there, it was like everybody just watching me. I'm like, I'm just buying mustard, and there's a line of people, and everybody would get out of the way and let me go and pay for it first. Get this Gentile out of the store. I was like, all right, that's fine.
I had a weird experience when Tiny was little. I had a job doing training for AI credit or something. Anyway, they sent me to Los Angeles, San Francisco, up to Washington, and I spent like 4 days in each place. And I hadn't been back. I was born out here, and we left for New York when I was 7. And I hadn't been back since. And I came out to LA, and the office I was teaching in wasn't far from Little Korea. So I thought, before I go back to my hotel tonight, maybe I'll go and either get some Korean food or buy something in a Korean market and take it back to the hotel, whatever. So I walk the 5 or 6 blocks. I'm in Little Korea. And the first thing I notice is there are no signs in English.
Yeah.
Now, this is before the riots after
Rodney King in 95.
Yeah, this is just before.
Yeah, the rooftop Korean
Rodney King riots.
They became famous. The LA rooftop Koreans.
And there's nothing in English. And I walk in a store. And I'm sorry, it's a store. They want to make money. They like people to buy stuff, or at least that was my impression of what stores are for. I have never felt so unwelcome in my life. It was weird. So I tried another store, same thing. Little Korea was like, nah, we're Korea and we don't want you.
There's
It was-
there's Chinatown in Flushing, that's another big hub. So when I was working at Shea Stadium, I would take my bus from my community and then transfer there. I loved it over there. You get the most authentic soup dumplings and Chinese food.
That's where, what's her name was? Opera, when you were a kid.
Oh, Supiliniac.
Supiliniac, yeah. We have a friend who lives about 10 blocks from that part of Flushing.
Back when I was a little kid, it was Jewish and Italian, and now it's all Chinese. Like there's no English signs, and like
no. We've got relatives who live in the South Bronx, and I was driving them somewhere one day, and I said, this used to be they're black, and I said, this used to be a Jewish neighborhood, and they went, no, you're crazy. I said, what's the name of this street? They went, Yeshiva Boulevard.
Yeah.
Said, yeah. You know what a yeshiva is? And they went, no.
Yeah.
I said, it's a Jewish school. And I said, and then we drove past the building where one of them went when they were in nursery school. I said, I'm going to pull over next to the building. Look at the building. What do you see on the building? They go, 6-pointed stars. Yep. I said, I'm telling you, this was a Jewish neighborhood.
This neighborhood, that one of the side streets is Rabbi Ben something Way, and it's the soup dumplings and noodle, and I don't even know the names of the stores, but I know them. Yeah. Like one of them I call the Dirty Noodle because it's just and it's got the best foods. It's so good, and originally my comic book. The 3rd, 4th issue is going to be set in that. I just love it.
Oh, that's great. That's really cool. Okay, so I went to Texas A&M. Texas A&M is in the middle of central nowhere, Texas, and but I'm from New York, and like we've been talking, I used to go to Chinatown. I've actually been to the Chinese restaurants where they don't like write English on the menu and stuff. I understand that.
Yeah, you could get fried jellyfish kind of food, like as I call it, Klingon food. Like authentic Chinese food is Klingon food.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But so I'm in Texas and I'm a little bit homesick, and I'm looking online, and there's a Chinese restaurant here that like has like real Chinese names and stuff. It's not like Panda Express or something like that. It's a real Chinese restaurant. Like, that's so cool. I'm looking at their menu and I'm going down, and then there's one thing on the menu that I don't understand the name. Like, it doesn't sound familiar to me at all. So I called up the restaurant. I said, hi, I'm interested in putting in an order, but I wanted to know a little bit about, and I named the thing. I go, not for you. Excuse me? Said, no more white people. We gave to white people. They complain. No more white people. You cannot have it. If you cannot read it, you cannot have it.
And the food was delicious.
Like, but I'm not Texan. I'm a New Yorker. I might actually really like this. No for white people.
I was in Albuquerque and I went to a Thai restaurant, which is not the smartest thing in the world to do. And I was just like, this isn't spicy. And the guy, I was like, can you make it spicy? And he goes, okay. And he comes back with it. I'm like, this is supposed to be Thai. It's supposed to be. So he goes, I make it spicy. They no pay. They don't want it. I throw it away. I have to make it again. So I'm like, here you go. And I said, I'm paying for it right now. There's my money. Make this spicy. And he goes, and he comes back. He goes, this is spicy the way I eat it. And I was like, nothing. And he goes, you crazy. And he came back with a big, he goes, you got problem. You got problem.
Okay. Growing up, I did something called Kathak, which is North Indian religious dance. Basically, in India, for most of its history, the population has been relatively illiterate, so they can't read their own Bible. So you go to the temple, and the dancers dance out the stories from the Bhagavad Gita and some of the other traditional stories of the Hindu religion. And which, before someone yells at me in the chat or anywhere else, yes, I know it's multiple religions, but whatever.
Right.
So I just totally blanked on where I was. So I did Kathak. So I was the only Goria. I was the only white girl in the whole class. And I did it for 13 years. So I got very close with the other South Asian girls. And they would we'd go over to someone's house, and they'd get into the pantry, and they'd be pulling out like Jamaican hot sauces and certain other things, and they'd be like putting it directly on their tongue and testing each other. And I just like, what, do you want to join in? I'm like, I'm white. That's just too spicy for me. And then like my mom would come and eat the exact same thing. I'm like, you're not helping, Ma.
when I moved to
I
Albuquerque,
can't handle super spicy. I've been getting better, but no, I can't handle super spicy for whatever reason. Never been able to.
when I moved to Albuquerque, they put green chili on everything. If Tony Grigo's in the chat, he'll confirm. He lives, but and I was like, you guys are nuts. You guys are nuts. I lived there for 7 years, but now like I mail order green chili and put it on everything here. You know, I haven't been in Albuquerque. I moved out. It's been 20 years, and then my wife came from Canada, and I'm making chili and stuff. She's like, "Oh, you're making it too hot. You're making now she makes chili, and my friend's like, it's too hot. She's like, shut up and eat it. Like we just got it. I don't know. But there comes a point where it's not flavorful anymore. There comes a point where
it's just hot. There's no flavor.
It's
our neighbors, they moved away a little while ago, but before they moved away, they planted ghost peppers. And they actually the husband actually took some of the peppers, dried them out, and ground them up for me so that I could use, because I try to use spicy food in some ways to help with the pain. Because he was a vet, and he said, if you don't want to be taking all those pills, if you don't want to be stuck on all the pain meds, this can actually help somewhat. And he would like literally just take, and he'd like run it all around his tongue, and I'm like, that's a ghost pepper.
Yeah.
Like that's like the second or third highest thing on the Scoville rating. What are you doing putting that directly on your tongue? And he was like, no. And I use it now. I use a little bit every day. And when I do use it regularly, I do seem to need somewhat less of the painkillers. But I'm just like, I'm baby stepping it just a little bit.
I have a high tolerance for spice. Like I said, I enjoy spice. I got a bunch of spices out here, and I'll never forget. I made a big pot of chili, and all my friends were coming over for dip. And I was living out in the Hamptons for a summer, and the next door neighbor had this little jar. It looked like a little drug vial, and inside was one little red pepper, and it was in oil, so it looked like fake. You know, it looked like a movie prop. A little drug vial with like a yellow clear oil and a little tiny like pink chili pepper. It looked like plastic. And he goes, "Oh, it's really spicy, little old man. It's real spicy. Don't put a whole one in. You know, dice it up." I'm like, okay, all right. You know, I'm making chili, so I took it and I just diced it up and I threw except for the little stem. So it was like less than a centimeter, and I put it in my chili. That chili was too hot to eat. From this, I don't know where he got this. We called it the nuclear pepper. I don't know where it came from, what it was called. I've never had heat, and I've had ghost pepper, and I mean, as hot as that is, I could deal with it.
Ghost peppers used to be considered one of the highest in the Scoville, but now there's like 3 or 4 that I think. Right. There's an actual institute in New Mexico that is the Chili Pepper Institute, and they're the ones that actually judge everything.
Right, it's ridiculous. There comes a point where it just doesn't taste good. I keep bringing this comment up. I want Flushing. Yeah, we used to joke downtown Flushing. It's no longer Korean, or you know, I don't know what you were talking about, but it's full on Chinese now. And you know what? Now that I think about it, maybe there is part of Korea, but there's also Elmhurst, which is not too far, and it's all Indian.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So, and then there's a little area where it's a Thai, and that's like I just loved it because working in Queens, that's the only thing that I miss is the like I found an Indian place right by me that my wife doesn't like, but I love it. But Elmhurst is the best. There's a place called if you're around here, the Jackson Diner. So it was a famous, I forget the name of the town in Queens, but it was a famous diner. And then Indians bought it, and it like you walk down that street, and there's like bridal shops, like Indian bridal, hemp tattoos. It's all Indian. Yep. It smells beautiful. It smells in. And then the Jackson Diner, but they didn't change the name because it's like a landmark famous, but it's an Indian restaurant. And oh my God, it is so good. I'll go there by myself, just sit down, you know.
Well,
there you go. That Indian restaurant's called the Jackson Diner. And I guess
anytime someone talks to me or my mom, it started with my mom, of course, but about wanting to travel, but not knowing they want to travel. I want to learn new experiences. I want to meet people from other cultures. I want to do, where should I go? What should I do? And it's like, go to Queens.
Yeah.
And they just look at us and go, you go to a different part of Queens, a different little mini neighborhood every weekend. You try the food. You talk to the people. You can even try on sometimes if they got clothing or other things that are cultural.
Absolutely.
You do that. In a couple months, you'll know where you want to travel.
Yeah.
Every weekend, you go to a different little. I mean, I always loved. For me, New York was the center of the world because it was the melting pot of the world. There was everything in New York. It was like,
you're right about Queens. Queens more than any of the other boroughs. It was.
oh,
You
yeah,
could
Queens
go to a
allowed
little
its-
German place. You could go
Queens
to
allowed its
restaurant.
micro communities to stay cultural in a way. The other communities used to have these little micro cultural communities, but they all got broken up and kind of became more corporate. Queens is still truly. You go to this area, you get this. You go to. We had an acupuncturist. Oh, he was amazing, and he was right near Kings Highway.
Brooklyn.
He was in Brooklyn. Sorry, not Queens, but Brooklyn. He was near Kings Highway in Brooklyn, and we used to love going there because the best Greek food. We go and pick up Greek food and take it home for the week.
Yeah. It wasn't by the Triborough Bridge. There was the overhead, the E train, the Elmhurst stop. Elmhurst and 25th Street, I think was the name of the stop. And then you walk down and you walked on, I think it was 25th Street or something like that. And you just walk down the block and it was, like over here, there's McDonald's on the corner because it's McDonald's, and there's a Dunkin' Donuts on the other corner because it's Queens. And, and then once you get past those two, there's beautiful, like I took my wife there. We would just walk in all the dresses and everything. They knew like we weren't going to buy anything, but we're not buying an Indian wedding, but it was just you felt like you were in India because the smell, everybody was Indian, nobody was speaking English. It was just really cool. Then you go into the Jackson Diner, and I think it's called Jackson Heights. Yeah, Queens is the most ethnically diverse place on earth. You go to Elmhurst, you could get Indian food, or you could get like Thai food, and Vietnamese, also Vietnamese food. Oh my God!
Oh yeah.
I'm getting hungry thinking about the bowl of pho that I had.
We have not found a really good Thai place out here in San Diego County. We found a couple places where we're like, all right, but it's just like west of the Mississippi, they had like extra like lime or some type of sourness to so much of the food that I've never.
Vietnamese food everywhere.
And my mom says there's Vietnamese food everywhere. There's lots of Vietnamese places, and there's no.
Yeah,
the other thing I was going to say was New York.
I only live in Suffolk County. I'm only an hour away from Queens.
Yeah. So we know Suffolk County. Actually, we know Suffolk County really well because we used to drive to Bayshore every year because my family has a house on Fire Island.
Okay. Yeah.
My great grandmother built it after the storm of '38 when the whole island was basically washed clean.
No, they didn't build it. It was left. It survived.
Are we going to go to an argument right now? I'm online.
But yeah, I was just doing a video and showing pizza, and it's good pizza, but it's not as good as Queens.
There's no pizza like New York pizza.
No. I like,
especially out here. Come to California, don't ask for pizza.
Oh, you live in San Diego. Do you ever go to New York Pizza Department? And NYPD, there's a
pizza department. Have you heard of that?
And they used to deliver the pizza in a New York City police car. This was 1992 when I worked there for a summer. Making pizza.
She'll look it up. We'll see if they're still around. I'm going.
I don't know.
There's a place called Massachusetts Pizza, and every time we pass, I'm like, who goes to Massachusetts for pizza? Why would you name yourself Massachusetts? That's just insane.
But I like Chicago pizza. That's a big debate. Like
it's not a pizza; it's a casserole.
But it still tastes good. Even bad pizza is good pizza.
I'm not saying it doesn't taste good. I'm just saying it's not pizza.
Yeah. Do you ever get a Chicago dog? When I went out there, like, you got to get a Chicago dog. I was like, all right, it's good.
Yeah, it's all right. I like New York City.
When I went to Iceland, Iceland is big in hot dogs, so I get a hot dog in Iceland.
That's really. I didn't know that. That's cool.
David Alcia says Queens is the best Colombian, Vietnamese, Indian, legit Chinese hot pot. Yes, absolutely. When I was running a games group in Flushing, a couple of guys were Korean, a couple of guys were Chinese, one guy was Japanese, and we would all. One of the girls she was German and Italian, and I used to joke that she lost World War II, and she'd get mad, But we would all go to different restaurants and everything. It was a lot of fun, so much good. New York pizza is the only pizza.
Dan Skippy. That's real
Now I
pizza.
got to ask you. Now I'm getting hungry for pizza. What do you like, Sicilian or thin, round?
No, I like the regular thin round that you can fold and eat, and you can put all sorts of toppings on, and you can be walking with it and eat it without having any problems. That's real pizza. That's New York pizza.
Guys, what you're seeing here is this is an Italian. If you ever read Lenny Bruce, How to Talk Dirty and Influence People, he says if you're from Brooklyn, you're Jewish, even if you're not Jewish. So basically, my family's from Brooklyn. So here we are, two old Jewish people from New York. What do we end up talking about? Pizza. It's gonna devolve into pizza no matter what. What is your favorite slice of pizza? Like, what do you put on it?
Well,
My
actually, there was
favorite-
New York City is full of these places called 99-cent pizza. Like, I not
Yeah, and
used-
the slice is about as big as a shovel.
yeah, it got down to the slices would be more close to regular size, but they were still just they only have regular or white, and then you can get like pepperoni or some stuff on it. But it's like it's very simple, it's very straightforward, and it's always so good. And for whatever reason, the one we had that was on 86 between Second and Third, which is just literally it was 6 blocks from our apartment. Don't know if it was the water, don't know if it was. It's the same 99-cent pizza you get all over the city, but this particular spot had the best tasting white pizza I've ever had in my entire life.
Well,
It was so good.
I was a part owner of a pizzeria for 5 years, and the secret of the pizza is the water.
Yep.
New York City, whatever you want to say about New York City, the New York City water is the equivalent of Deer Park water. So when you're, and if it tastes bad, that's because of your local plumbing.
Yep.
So if you go to Manhattan,
They do taste tests. There have been nationwide taste tests, and Manhattan wins hands down almost every single time for
because
best
the New York
tasting
City
water.
water, it comes from a reservoir upstate, which is this literally no joke. It's the same reservoir where they bottle Deer Park water.
Oh yeah.
So there's been places like in Florida. I'm like, this pizza is so good, and they're ex-New Yorkers, and they say they get big jugs of Deer Park water, and that's what they use in their dough.
In
the altitude.
Chicago.
So if you go to like the dough won't rise. Like if you go to Denver, Colorado, you're not going to get pizza. That's why Chicago pizza is different, because Chicago is not New York is sea level. So the altitude and the water, so you could copy the water, but you can't copy the altitude.
Same thing with bagels. There was a spot in Chicago that like 25, 30 years ago, I was a kid, I think, when I learned about it, that they would literally import water from New York. Right. Because it was the only way to make bagels taste like New York City bagels.
And you got to
boil them in New York City water.
People don't realize that. You got to boil the bagels, and that's what puts that sheen on the outside. Other places they bake the bagels, and I do like a baked bagel, but it's not in New York City. And it's funny, when my wife moved to Winnipeg,
H&H Bagels was literally 2 blocks from my apartment. 2 blocks. I could go to H&H, and they were open until the last couple of years we were there. They were open 24/7. I could get up at 3:30 in the morning, finally be slightly pain-free, really hungry. I can go get a fresh bagel that just got made at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning.
My wife
in California.
when she moved to Winnipeg, she was like, "You arrogant New Yorkers with your pizza and bagels." And now she's been here for 20 years. She's like, "Yeah, the pizza and bagels is the best." Like she'll tell her friends, "You ain't never had a bagel. You never had pizza." You buy. It's basically bread rolled up and baked. Like those Thomas's bagels that you get in the supermarket. I still like them. They're still good.
Yeah, they're not bad, but they're not New York bagels.
Yeah. And, what about knishes? There's another New York, Brooklyn thing. You don't have
good potato knish with some sauerkraut and some applesauce and a little bit of sour cream.
So when I was talking to your mom about that matzo ball soup,
yeah,
one of my partners at work was, he was, big proud Jewish guy, and he liked to cook. And like Jewish holidays, he wouldn't be there. He wouldn't come to work. And he was just like, "Oh, I got to make the matzo ball soup. I got to make the matzo." And I love matzo ball soup. I'll tell you my Jewish story. My mom used to call me her Jewish son. But anyway, I love matzo ball soup. So he gave me his recipe, and one of the things you don't use water. He uses seltzer when making. And he goes, you boil the chicken, He goes, and you take the whole chicken, you boil it, he goes, and then you strain it and you get rid of the chicken or you use it for something else. He goes, now you have chicken stock. He goes, and then when you take the, I forget what brand, but it was a blue box to make the matzo balls, the dough.
Manischewitz?
I think so. I don't.
Manischewitz has a box of matzo ball soup mix that has the matzo meal in it. So that's probably
right.
what it was.
But you use the matzo. He goes, but you don't use water. You use seltzer to mix it and everything. And so I've had this recipe memorized for 16 years ago was the last time I saw him, and I still got to make the matzo ball soup.
Mom started to comment, and then we got distracted with other stuff. So
yeah, that's the way competitions are.
You're supposed to know that matzo ball soup is done because the matzo balls float. They cook and cook until they float. Well, Mom's matzo balls have never floated. they sink to the bottom and they stay there. And as one person said, they're really good, but they're kind of more like a meat substitute than what most people consider a fluffy matzo balls. But I'll be honest, I think I like them better.
Chris McWilliams, Chris and I went out. We found a noodle place in Manhattan one night. Me, him, and Vaughn Coleman. And we watched Vaughn Coleman, who's about as skinny as my pinky, out eat. He ate so much food that the waitress didn't bring half his meal because she thought he was kidding. And we're like, no, give him the rest of the food. But anyway, he lives next to the Ashokan Reservoir where the New York gets its water. We could personally vouch for the pizza bagels as well. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
That's really cool.
So when I was a little kid, I was obsessed with the 10 Commandments movie, Charlton Heston. This was before VHS and streaming services. So whenever it was on, you either watched it or you missed it, for you youngins. And it was usually on Easter time.
Easter and Passover at the same time.
Passover. So it's like a 3-hour movie, and I'm like a little ADHD kid watching the 10. So I remember, Mom, why don't we celebrate Passover? And she was like, because we're not Jewish. And I'm like, yeah, but we go to church and they talk about Moses and, he's in the Old Testament and blah, blah, blah. So she's like, okay. So I don't know who she talked to, but we had a rabbi come to the house and we did a Passover. Is it called a Seder? Is that the correct
Seder,
word? Yep. Yeah, we had a Passover Seder and it was me, my father, and my mother. I'm sure my father was like, what are we doing? And I was enthralled and we did, I don't know. I called it the magic spells because I was a little kid. I didn't know what it was.
Prayers.
And we did all these prayers. And then I was like, well, when are we doing it? No, my mom's like, we just did it for you. And so I was like, we need matzo ball soup. So my mom would make me matzo ball soup. And she'd be like, this is Joe. He's Catholic. This is Eileen. She's Catholic. This is John, my little Jewish son. But I didn't know that, you go to church.
Well, actually, there are some Christians that do actually celebrate a form of Passover. And there's a lot of Christians that have been wanting to learn about Passover more and more over the years. And when I was at Texas A&M, I was the Jewish chaplain for the Corps Cadets, and I was on an interfaith council. So I actually got tapped to do Passover Seders for a bunch of the Baptist churches so that I could show them what it was about and what's it like. And it was very interesting to say the least. But
when I went to get my confirmation name, the Catholic ritual of confirmation.
My dad's Episcopalian, so I do know.
Okay, but the tradition is you name after a saint.
Yep.
So I wanted Moses, and they're like, but he's not a saint. I'm like, how? What prophet, saint? What's the difference? And like, this is a Jewish prophet. You got to get a Catholic saint. So I was like, okay, Paul. And Pope John Paul. Oh, it's John Paul. And all the nuns were happy. And they're like, oh, why'd you pick Paul? I said, because he's my favorite Beatle. And the nuns all got mad at me. I was like, John Paul. So, John Paul. And she goes, I said, if I ever get confirmed again, my next name is going to be Ringo. And they were like so mad at me. But there's my, the only Catholic kid in town that had the rabbi come over and do a Seder for us.
As for Logic's finest, Manischewitz is actually everywhere.
I didn't. Yeah.
Manischewitz is technically everywhere. You can even find it in most supermarkets. You ask them, where is the kosher section or where is the international section, and there'll be a little area, and there'll be Kedem grapefruits and Manischewitz products, mostly the matzo ball soup and a couple other little things.
Yeah,
in most supermarkets you can still find it.
In New York City, they have what they call the ethnic aisle.
Yeah,
And one side of it will be like whatever spices, canned goods, and then ethnic. And there's
But I mean,
Goya
like I could get Manischewitz products in Texas. I can get Manischewitz products out here in California. I mean, I'm not sure about like Iowa or like somewhere in the middle of the country where there's no Jewish populations at all. I still think you can probably find Manischewitz somewhere.
I've been seeing all of the ethnic parts of all supermarkets getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because it used to be just literally like one little section, and this was Jewish, this was what Jamaica, but now there's literally like I'm in Suffolk County, and there's a huge that's one of the things that drove me nuts about, as much as we were raving about Queens. And by the way, I'm really hungry talking about all this, but I hated going food shopping, like to the point my wife didn't even ask me, because there's room. That's one of the things. You go food shopping in Queens, and every supermarket there's only room for one, and there's always one person, and you look at each other. It becomes like a battle of wills. Who's going to back up? Because it ain't going to be me. I hate. So now it's like a pleasure out here in Queens. They got nothing but room. You could fit like six shopping carts side by side. There's no problem.
In Suffolk.
Yeah, in Suffolk. But even in Suffolk, the ethnic aisle is huge. You get all the Goya products you want. You even more Spanish products. You get Jewish products. They got Asian products, and I could walk to it. Right, there's an Indian supermarket, and I love you. You could get that's like paneer, that cheese to make sag paneer.
Oh, paneer, yeah.
You can get that cheese. And then there's an Asian supermarket, like a Chinese, Korean supermarket. So it's not like it used to be or maybe it always was. I just never realized where to look as a kid. But,
there've been ethnic supermarkets for a long time, but a lot of times they were relatively small,
right?
And you didn't go there if you didn't have a reason to go there,
right? Yeah.
So the bigger supermarkets are trying to actually, as far as in my personal opinion, are trying to kind of steal that market share from the little tiny stores, and I don't actually really like that as much. I'd rather actually be able to go to an ethnic store and talk to someone who knows what they're talking about and stuff than
that's what my wife
like ShopRite or even Vaughn's, and be like, I'm not going to ask the guy at Vaughn's certain questions about different Japanese rice. I'm going to go to the Asian market and talk to the people about different types of Japanese rice. Like,
where did we just go? We my wife and I just went to another supermarket that was Indian, from India, supermarket, and we were the only white people in the place. Like the cashier didn't even speak English. And what do we? But we got a ramen. It was Indian ramen.
Okay.
So it was Indian food. It was Japanese food
made by
Indians. You know what I mean? It was good. I'm a pretty adventurous eater, so I'll try almost anything once.
Joining those things, the last few things we've been talking about all together.
Yeah, nothing about.
Sorry,
India. What's that?
When I was in India, I was good for most of the trip. I did end up getting food poisoning when I was in Jaipur, and there was very little I could eat. And the people who I had been traveling with were like, there's a Pizza Hut. We can get you like some tomato soup, something very simple. You can just drink and get through. So after 2 or 3 days, I feel better. I'm ready to go. I was like, let's go to the Pizza Hut. And they're all kind of looking at me. I'm like, what? They're like, you'll see. And we get in India, at least in Jaipur in 2006, Pizza Hut's a fucking 4-star restaurant.
Oh, wow.
It's like full tables with like cloth napkins, glasses. And I didn't even have any pizza. I had the most amazing mushroom pasta I've ever had in my life. And I've never tasted mushrooms like this ever before. And it was so good. And it was like everything that it was like being in a high-end Italian restaurant in India, but it was called Pizza Hut.
My wife took me to Iceland for my 50th birthday. She surprised me with a trip to Iceland.
That's really cool.
I remember, I get hungry and I get grouchy. So I'm like, we got to eat now, So we went into a restaurant, and I was just like, I don't know why, but I was just in the mood for a steak. And they're really particular. Like they won't fly in animals. If an animal leaves India, if an animal leaves Iceland, it can't come back. So if you get an Icelandic horse and leave to shoot a movie with it, you can never, because they're always afraid of disease. It's a tiny island. They didn't have cats in Iceland until 1987 or 89 or something like that. There was no cat. So, to the very everything is fresh is what I've never had a steak like that. And the water, they would tell, don't buy bottled water. It's a waste of money because they just bottle tap water. I've never had delicious water. Like, water is always good, it's water, but this was like delicious glacial water. It was so good. And then they're like, be careful with the hot water because it comes from the thermal vents. Like, you turn the hot water on for more than like 3 seconds, you could boil your ramen with tap water. It's you're gonna hurt yourself if you take a shower.
I didn't know that. I knew that they use the thermals and stuff, but I didn't know that it. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, like, because it's cheap electricity, so and it's dark so long, so that there's lights. Everybody leaves their lights on because it's basically free. But I love whenever I go to another country, I go to the supermarkets. I make it sound like I'm a world traveler. I mean, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Canada, I've been to Iceland, and I've been to Mexico and Bahamas. No, not Bahamas. Where the hell did I go? What's the other island out there? Not Aruba. I forget.
Jamaica.
Barbados. And so we left the little resort and we went to the supermarket in Barbados. The only white guy, everybody's looking at. I just love going to supermarket because to me that's the real country. And in Iceland, it was funny because you don't recognize the products, but they look familiar, but they're a little different. And then what I thought was cool is you open up a door, and all the meat and vegetables the whole place is refrigerated. So you walk around and. That's right. My wife's yelling Barbados. Yeah, I said Barbados. I just love. I love that, and I love on Barbados they had their fast food place was Chefette, and you could get burgers and you could get why can't I think of it now? But chicken. What's the sauce?
Cutlet?
No, it's like it's like a chicken roti with
like a roti.
Chicken roti, but with. What do they call it? What's with the green sauce or a red sauce or yellow sauce? Why can't I think of the name of this? It's so freaking good. But I went there, and the two girls behind the counter, black Barbados girls, they started preparing a burger because white guy from America. I want the roti. I want and they're like, oh, okay. And they watched me eat it because I guess they thought I was gonna get mad or whatever. But I was like, no way. To the point I talked to a friend from Barbados. He's like, yeah, get this sauce, get this. So my cabinet upstairs, I got Thai satay sauces. But the thing is, I never cook. It's almost like I'm collecting them. Like, I gotta go see what I can throw away. Some of them are so old. It's gonna drive me nuts that I can't remember the names of these sauces. In Elmhurst and Corona, I love all the small family-owned Italian delis, authentic handmade lasagna, hero sandwiches made. Yes.
Yep.
Corona and what's the other town? But there's same with German places. They make their own Spätzle, which is like a pasta-based soup. It's so good. They make their own bratwursts, which I'm not a big fan of those German sausages. But I realized I only got them from the supermarket. And then when you go to these...
Yeah, it's different.
Oh, it's so good.
I went to Germany when I was 12 for the summer. And I had Weisswurst and everything class in Germany, in Munich, in München. And I came home and I'm like, I really want to... I was like, this is not the same thing. No. But there was a German restaurant just actually past the 99-cent pizza on 2nd Avenue. I'm trying to remember the name. They shot 2 or 3. It was a really, really traditionally German food, Bavarian German food. And Anthony Bourdain did a show there, did an episode there, and all of these foodie people did stuff there. And I would go every once in a while just to get some good hard cider.
Yeah, Queens.
I miss it. I had not really realized how much I missed the variety and authenticity of the food in New York.
Right.
Now you made me home.
I tell anybody watching this, if you're outside of New York, Manhattan is one thing. Everybody goes to Manhattan. You go to all the touristy things. But I think the heart of New York City is Queens.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. New York is touristy. That's where all the Long Islanders and the upstates, they go to live and look at me, I'm a New Yorker, but the real
The bridge and tunnel crowd. That's what they were always called, the bridge and tunnel crowd.
I think the authentic Brooklyn and Queens, but I'm more familiar with Queens, but I do think it's priced itself out. The regular people can't afford it.
No, New York is just
I think
just lost its way completely.
I think Bronx is the new hip area because there's some really bad areas in the Bronx that are just literal ghettos. Like if you go down to Jerome Street, you do not want to break down in Jerome. But I think the gentrified.
Right near my cousin's building. Yep.
Yeah, you could go there. Logic says he thinks he knows the deli you're talking about, up the block from one of the new stations on the new 2nd Avenue subway. I don't know.
I wasn't talking about a deli. I was talking about a restaurant, but there actually is a deli just up from the new 2nd Avenue subway that is also very good too. I actually know exactly what you're talking about.
I remember,
a little further up. It's like at 87th or 88th or something like that.
I remember I had to take a class up by 98th Street, and after work,
see the whole. It's driving me crazy. It's a white sign. It's got blue letters, brown door with a gold. I can see the thing in my head. I have no idea.
That's the thing about literally, you could go to Manhattan and then go to that same location a year later, and every store on the block is different. It
has been 6 years since I've been in New York.
Yeah, it's an authentic German deli. Yes, that's the one. Yep, Logic knows. If I ask Logic, where I know you're from New York, but are you Queens? And if so, what city? You don't have to tell, but I'm just curious. But I remember
we used to live at on 80th between 2nd and 3rd, and there's just so much in that area. And then actually a friend of mine from A&M is Hungarian, and he's obsessed with his Hungarian history. And he's like, did you know there's a Hungarian bakery not far from where your address is that is one of the top 10 Hungarian bakeries in the whole country? I'm like, you mean the place I get babka every other day? What?
Logic says a white sign, dark brown door.
Yes.
When I used to get off and walk down to 98th Street to this class that I had to take for a specialty and for an electrician certificate.
Okay.
And I got 2 hours to kill, and it's just like, and this is the middle of Spanish Harlem, and I don't know the area. Everybody talks Spanish. I stand out like a sore thumb, and I'm just like, look at this place. I can't even read the sign. It's in some Spanish that I don't understand. And I walk downstairs, and there's just a stool there. Nobody, like they were like, I was ordering food, and literally taco, like pointing to the picture. Oh my God, it was the best. And that's the way it is in Manhattan. You just, like you could literally get out the subway blindfolded and then walk out into the street and be like, that place. And odds are you're going to have something good.
Yeah. Well, it's also funny because as much as we do have a lot of authentic traditional stuff, we also have these insane fusions or kind of like cultural overlaps. Like you go to Spanish Harlem or the South Bronx, almost every single Chinese restaurant has fried chicken.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not Chinese fried chicken. It's American fried chicken.
The new thing, I haven't tried it yet, but Korean fried chicken, they're all over
tried it, but
now.
It was just so funny to me because it was like, because people would walk in like, I want 2 egg rolls and a half a chicken.
Yeah. Every Chinese restaurant you could get French fries now in New York, and it kind of bothers me.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said every Chinese restaurant you could get French fries, and it kind of bothers me.
Yeah, that is weird.
But if you're in San Diego, my friend Jimmy says, like, if in the Korean neighborhood, he lives in San Diego. He goes, you could go into a McDonald's in San Diego in the Korean neighborhood and get rice instead of French fries. And then when I lived in Albuquerque,
I'm gonna look that up. I'm gonna try that.
When I lived in Albuquerque, you could get green chili cheeseburgers. And oh my God, a McDonald's.
In Maine, you can get lobster. You can get lobster sandwiches thingies.
Yeah. Yeah. We're talking food.
Yeah. Now we're both hungry.
So you're in San Diego. In 1993, I moved out to San Diego, and I lived with my friend, and that's when I worked at that New York pizza department. And then it supposedly got in the news because they had a retired New York City black and white police car, and that's what the guy delivered the pizza in. And
That's
like
totally crazy.
the police department made them stop because people will pull it up. They thought it was a real police car, so it was in front of the place. They got the parking spot right in front, and that it was like a touristy thing. I worked there, and then from there I went to Albuquerque, and then from Albuquerque I went to San Francisco, and I couldn't get a job that I got a job, but I couldn't get a job that could pay me enough to live in San Francisco. This was 2000, and that's when I came back to New York. But I will say this: San Francisco has the best Chinese food I've ever had in my life. Oh my God. I want to go to Chinese food. I just want to go to San Francisco just to go to these Chinese places.
Yeah, well, Chinatown in San Francisco is ancient as far as like anything in America, and very authentic, and it's been authentic for a long time. So that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, I that's one of the things when I was transferring and working in downtown Flushing, I would try a different restaurant every time. And it's funny because once you get away from the main Four Corners intersection, there's less and less interaction with white people. And like you sit down, and like every Chinese restaurant has two menus, one in English and one in Chinese. But I would get to, they didn't even have an English menu. And there's times I sat down and I ordered stuff. I'm like, I don't know what I'm eating. Like, is this fish? Like I remember the waitress thought it was funny, and she gave me a fried jellyfish, and they all watched me eat it. I was like,
no, thank you.
It didn't make it through COVID.
I guarantee that you have never had that food where you get a Chinese Chinese fast food is American food. And I remember that was a culture shock because when I was 16 years old, I was dating this girl, Rachel, and we used to go to the same Chinese place in Long Island every day until we got friendly with the owner. And then he invited us to a family party in the restaurant for Chinese New Year's.
Nice.
And it was authentic Chinese food. And like I said, that's where I said, I feel like I'm eating Klingon food. It was like I was eating just to be polite. And I'm an adventurous eater. And then there was a Chinese restaurant on the corner of growing up where I would go. And they, at 7:00 every day, they would sit down as a family and eat. But they didn't eat egg rolls and shrimp, chicken, and broccoli.
They ate real chicken. They ate real Chinese food. Yeah. Well, so my mom looked up NYPD pizza. It turns out it's not New York Department. It's New York NYPD pizza on Friars Road, and it didn't make it through the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would be surprised because the couple were in their late 60s when I worked there in 1993. So I'd be surprised if it was the same people. Yeah. But we've been talking now for almost 2 hours. So talking about food. Yeah, it's a comic book channel, everybody. Yeah. Anything you want to say that I keep talking and don't give you a chance to talk?
No, I've enjoyed the conversation immensely. But I'm really hungry.
Yeah, me too. This is why, like a few people, like a few famous comic book people, they declined to come on my channel because they always say, "Well, what's the itinerary?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to talk about until we start talking.
Well, it's like, I mean, I guess if you're a famous comic book person, the itinerary should be you. It's a comic book channel. Talk about your comic books. Talk about your history.
I don't have an itinerary. Like whatever. Like we talked about me dating a Jewish girl. Ten Commandments. What's the name of that matzah?
Shmura matzah.
Shmura. I got to try that.
I'm really, really, really bad at mailing stuff. But if you send me, I'll give you my address. And if you send me an envelope, like a self-addressed envelope, I will send you some of the ghost peppers.
Okay. There's that's funny because I just had what's his name? Quigley on the channel.
Oh, Darnell's the best.
Yeah, he was on yesterday. He lives in Louisiana. So of course, whenever I talk to people, I'm like, oh, you live in Louisiana? So you live in Louisiana? Where can I get some andouille sausages? And so he's like, oh, I'll mail you some. And I was like, everybody says they're going to mail me some and they never do. And he was like, all right. So he went to the place and it was destroyed by the hurricane. I'm like, oh man. He goes, when it opens up again, he says they make it there. Because out here in New York, you can get
he's real Cajun. He's real Cajun. He knows that.
Yeah. But I always I crave this andouille sauce, and I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, but I can order it on Amazon, but it's like $119 and you get a box of it. And I don't know if it's going to be any good. Like I'll order it for $20. But there's a restaurant by me, they make it their own. So I'm always disappointed. Like you can go to the supermarket and it's got this like, it comes pre-packaged Idale, Papa Idale. And I bought it and it's packaged. It's not the same. Darnell Riddles always messes with my brain. Yeah, I like talking to him. We talked yesterday. I swear to God, we talked for 15 minutes. We look up and it was like an hour and a half. You know, that's how.
He's a really great dude.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to go make something to eat now after talking about food. You know, this, ladies and gentlemen, you just saw what happens when two New Yorkers sit down. You know, that's we talk about food, like the weather for about 5 minutes, and then food. You know,
it always goes back to food.
Right. All right. Again, anything you want to say that I didn't give you a chance?
In general, you can find me every Friday night at 9:30 Pacific on the Insert Title Here podcast, which is on Drunken Emerald Arrow's channel. You can find me every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific time on either Drew the Outstanding or Horny Alf's channel for Pop Culture Patriots. Every other Saturday, you can find me at Heavy Metal Nate's channel doing Dungeons and Dragons. We're doing Curse of Strahd right now. I think this Saturday will be episode 17. It should be a lot of fun. My character has just gone from being a life-giving Aasimar to a patron of the goddess of death. So we'll see what happens.
We actually have a comic book question for you.
Oh, comic book question.
What got you into comics? What's your favorite book, and who's your favorite character, favorite artist? Stuff I should have been asking you.
My favorite character is probably actually Oracle, but that's like a personal thing since I ended up in a wheelchair. I really, really like and respect her and understand.
Were you involved in an accident, or is this a medical condition?
Medical. I have a neurological condition and a central nervous system dysfunction, so I can stand for a short period of time. I can walk a couple blocks, but after that, my system starts really, really having trouble pushing. Basically, I don't make enough energy. My mitochondria literally don't make enough energy for me to function right.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's called ambulatory wheelchair use. Basically, the wheelchair allows me to do things I wouldn't be able to do without it, but I don't need it every day, all the time.
So how do you feel that Barbara Gordon is no longer Oracle?
I was so angry. I am still so angry. My God, I could do an entire 2-hour show on how angry I am about them taking her out. There have been other Batgirls. You can have another Batgirl. She did not need to be Batgirl. Oracle was an amazing character.
Yes.
Oracle had an important place. She made herself an important place. And there was no fucking reason to give her a magical fucking surgery. It really, really made me mad.
I totally agree with you. I thought that, like, first, I'm not a big fan of the Killing Joke. As much as I love Alan Moore, I thought the Killing Joke was a Batman annual. At least Alan Moore says the same thing. He goes, it's just a Batman annual. I don't know why everybody, it's just the art makes it so good. But they took a Lemons and made Lemon. They really made Oracle was a great character. And the proof is they never replaced her. Yeah. There's something about Barbara Gordon as Oracle. That character was really good. And I think DC really messed up.
The analytical mind that she helped, that was developed. She had an analytical mind to begin with. Her dad was a cop and then the chief of police, and she understood all that stuff. But working with Batman really made her understand the power of the human mind. And so when she ended up in the chair, she didn't let it break her. She found a way to use that power in a different way. She was already good at tech. She just got better at it. And she became like the information source for all of the DC universe to a large degree. She was immensely. She had a lot of power in her own right, and they took that away from her.
I really did like Oracle. I always liked Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, but man, Oracle was a better character. Like,
and in a way, it was a more mature character. She went from Batgirl to Oracle because she was forced to, but it made her a different person in a way. It made her grow up in a different way. Just as freaking Dick decided he couldn't be Robin anymore and became Nightwing. Are we suddenly going to make him Robin again for some reason?
Right, he's going to go back. It really is a step backwards, and
it's a step backwards, and it's an unneeded step backwards. And I'm sorry, at a time when everyone's talking about diversity and everybody wants to be inclusive, you got rid of the one fucking girl in the wheelchair that was badass.
I was organic.
A couple years ago, I'm dressed up. I'm in my chair. We're rolling around down in the Gaslamp district and everything. They close everything down so like thousands of people can walk around, and you don't have to have a ticket to the con. You don't have to spend any money. You can have huge amounts of fun at San Diego Comic-Con without spending a dime on the actual convention. There's huge amounts of stuff to do outside of it. And especially there's all the roads that are blocked so everyone can walk around and see their costumes and do shit. I'm in my chair. I'm actually having a really good time. And these 3 girls come over to me and they kneel down. So they're at my eye level. And they go, did you know Marvel has a superhero for you too? And I'm looking at like, okay. I'm trying to be really nice. I don't want to start anything. I don't want to I'm trying to not be my New Yorker self.
Right.
And I'm just like, thank you. And they're like, her name is Sunfire. She's a spider person who's trans and disabled and swings around New York City with a wheelchair strapped to her fucking back. You took away Oracle and you give me this?
It's funny. I just turned on my TV. You know, I got a smart TV and it turns on I don't even know the name of the show, but it's a story about a black man transitions into a black woman who gets arrested for drug thing, and then at the end it says celebrating black culture. And I would just like to find a black guy who says that represents his culture, you know, on whatever it's. But anyway, back to what you said. Barbara Gordon turned into Oracle. Everybody accepted her. Everybody loved her. She filled out a niche that was like, oh, that's a really cool niche. She's the information guy that brokers everything. She was Charlie, you know, it was a really clever character. And then they did it backwards and they got rid of it. Now DC has a habit of doing that because if you Alan Scott now is the gay Green Lantern. But what people forget is in the 90s or in the 80s, Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern, who was my favorite Green Lantern, he had 2 kids, Jade and Obsidian.
Yep.
Obsidian was DC's first gay superhero, and nobody went nuts. Why? Because he didn't have a story. They didn't change anything. He was really like a cipher of a character, and it was in his few appearances in Infinity Incorporated. He was awkward. He went on.
Wasn't Northstar one of the first gay characters?
Yeah, that's Marvel. That's Marvel. But I'm saying DC's literally first gay character was Obsidian.
And then you erased him because you made his dad
erased him and made his father gay. So they literally got rid of the gay icon or whatever, the historical groundbreaking character, to retro a straight character. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, what editor?
I gave up on DC after New 52.
Yeah, me too. I
can't even try anymore. I will admit, I did one of my all-time favorite comic books of anything, just because I find it so funny and on point, is New 52 Aquaman #1. He saves a city and he gets kind of like barely acknowledged by the cops. He goes to a seafood restaurant and everyone's staring at him like why is he in a seafood restaurant? He sits down and someone says, "You can't be here. We sell fish to eat." He goes, "Yes, I want to eat fish." He goes, "But you talk to fish." He goes, "I don't talk to fish." He's really angry. Like, "I don't talk to fish. I tell them what to do. I talk to dolphins and whales sometimes, but I don't talk to fish." And then this kid behind him, like in a booth, like puts his head up and he goes, "What's it like to be like the worst like hero ever, or like the dorkiest hero ever, or something like that?" He's just like, "I'm done." And he gets up and he leaves a gold coin for his pregnant waitress and just leaves. He's like, "I'm so fucking done with this shit." It's just like, that was so funny. It was so perfect. It was so on point. I love this more than anything else.
I like what Master Hobo says. Because the Oracle identity got Barbara out of Batman's shadow. Yes, it did. It turned her
100%.
into her own character. Yeah, and then they put her back. How would Tiny fix Marvel and DC? Does she think they can be fixed? Or are they too far gone?
I don't know if they can be fixed. Some things, like, I don't know if they can be fixed without like stopping for a while and giving everyone like a break and a palate cleansing of some kind. And then they went back to real heroes, inspiring stories, things that make you want to be a better person. I think both Marvel and DC have the ability to go back to where they were, technically, if they had the right writers and they had the right editors and the right management. I mean, some of their art sucks these days, but generally speaking, the artists are still there. The artists aren't really the problem. Right. The problem are the writers and the editors.
It's not even the writers. The writers are just doing it's the editors.
Okay.
You know, the
Well, I'm
editors
sorry.
are hiring these people.
Some of the writers, I follow their Twitter or I watch them give interviews, and I'm sorry, some of them are real happy to be doing what they're doing.
Yes, yeah, but then again, like if you put an actor to, you get hired to be I don't know, gay Captain Kirk. You can take the job and you're happy to do it. It's not the actor's fault. It's the people. It's the producers. That's the way I look at Marvel and DC. It's the editor's fault. You know, like I have a story. I told it a million times about. I don't know how to fix DC. My problem with DC is they reboot their continuity every 5 years anyway. So just reboot DC. There you go, fixed. Have another crisis. You know, just say that the DC universe fluctuates, and every couple of years, you know, it has.
Yeah, but if you're going to do it to put things back where they should be, not doing it to make more weird crap that doesn't make any sense.
Right. Reboot it.
And I'm sorry, DC and Marvel had had a very different taste when I was a kid. If you wanted good versus evil, white and black, you went to DC. If you wanted a little bit more gray and a little bit more,
right,
is someone really a villain? Or if they're a villain, can we understand why they're a villain, but still actually treat them like a villain because they are a villain, even if your understanding of it? Yeah, I mean, they can go back to that. They can both go back to that. You don't need all this weird postmodern bullshit.
I have a big long, because to me, like I'm more vested in Marvel, but like to fix Marvel, like we all saw Misery. Remember, like she's like, you got to write the new book. So he just starts writing a book. It was a dream. She goes, it wasn't a dream. She goes, Misery was being buried at the end of the last book. You have to start with her you have to acknowledge everything. So James Caan was like, oh man. So, and he ended up writing, he said it was the best thing he ever wrote. You know, it's like, so to me, like, you can't just, they all wake up or whatever. Like, we have to acknowledge that the X-Men were crazy, that there was something fundamentally wrong. Like, you can't just say like, you know, whatever, you know, we're just going to not acknowledge it or whatever. Like, we have to. And
I'm sorry. I feel like both DC and Marvel have also completely shat on their own catalogs of characters.
Yes, absolutely. So
there's so much diversity that already existed.
Right.
I remember I went to New York Comic Con, I think it was 2011. And because I'm in the chair, like I get a little bit of attention from the more left-leaning press type there. And this woman walks over to me with a microphone from MTV. She goes, we're asking everybody, can you name 5 colored superheroes? And I went, green, purple, orange, or are we talking just like human shades? And she kind of looked at me like, human shades. Like, okay. And I just start naming them. And I'm going through, I'm like, and she's just looking at me like, they exist, bitch. Just go do the research. Right. Get your ass out of your MTV fucking chair, go down to a comic shop, talk to some people, and do the research. They existed. They were cool characters. I do find it interesting that especially with DC, almost all the black characters end up connected to lightning for some reason that I don't quite understand.
Yeah, that's a joke. All the black characters have electrical powers.
Yeah. But whatever. They're still there, and many of them are still well-rounded and good characters. Like, we've never seen Static Shock except in a cartoon. You want diversity in X-Men. Where the fuck was Thunderbird? I just, every time I turn around, for every argument, every excuse of why they had to change comics is bullshit. And it always proves that they didn't do the research or they didn't take the time to learn about all these other characters that I guess you might call them obscure today, but they were characters that people who actually cared about comic books knew.
Well, I you know, like, why do you got to race swap Spider-Man, whatever? Because, you know, I said, well, use whatever. I'm trying to think of
there's now like what, 12 different Spider people?
And then they go, well, nobody knows that character. I said, well, the day before John Wick was in the theater, nobody knew John Wick. You know,
exactly.
It was a good movie.
If you have a good character and you give him a good story, it's not going to matter if people know the name because the movie will be good and then the people will come.
Literally, how many people knew Rocket Raccoon before the Guardians of the Galaxy movie?
I did.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of comic book fans did. How many? You know, now your mom knows Groot. You know what I mean? Your grandmother knows.
I will say, the Star-Lord I grew up with was a bit more of an asshole.
I did a whole video on the difference. The original Star-Lord murdered to become Star-Lord. He became Star-Lord to commit genocide against the race of people that killed his mother. You know what I mean? That he's not this. So when they cast the guy from Parks and Recreation, I said, this is not the Star-Lord that I grew up with. You know, I like that character, but that's a different Star-Lord. That's the Marvel.
Yeah, it's a very different Star-Lord. I found that I enjoyed both, but I mean,
the original John Byrne Star-Lord didn't have a personality. He was just this stoic, quiet guy that, you know, the only thing that, like, everything happened to him. The only thing that he did was he killed somebody to get into his spot, so that when the Bray came and transported him to become Star-Lord, that's it. But that's literally what he did. Somebody else got chosen to become Star-Lord. He killed that guy and then took his place and became Star. And then the Master of the Sun was just like, you're useless to me. You got too much anger. And he goes, yeah, I want to get this. I want to kill the people that he goes, go kill them all. Here's your power. Go kill those people. And he literally transports them. He kills them all. And then he's like, you done? Now can I use you? You know, it's a really horrible origin for a superhero.
Yeah. Well, it's like Starship Troopers. My grandfather was actually friends with Heinlein.
Oh, cool.
And my uncle was so upset and hurt when Starship Troopers the movie came out, because he knew for a fact that Heinlein's widow put in the contract to get the rights to make the movie that they couldn't change a single word of dialogue. And she was convinced that would allow them to not fuck up her husband's work. Unfortunately, they kept all the dialogue the same and still completely destroyed her husband's work. But it's a fun movie. It's a fun action movie. It's a great popcorn movie. It's a great fight 'em, get 'em up movie. And Casper Van Dien's gorgeous. It's great. It's not Starship Troopers, though. The book is one of the most amazing book, in my opinion. It's one of the most amazing pieces of modern science fiction that exists.
It's a great book.
It's so good. But it has nothing to do with the movie. Except for a couple names.
Paul Benjamin, you know, Sargon of Akkad, he does like an hour-long breakdown of it's awesome.
Yes, I've seen Sargon's thing. So for me, like, the Star-Lord thing is kind of similar. Like, there's the book Star-Lord who's interesting, but he's dark, really dark, and an asshole. And then you've got Star-Lord who's a bit of an asshole, but also kind of fun and funny. And it's just, you just can't think of them as the same character, if that makes any sense.
Logic finally says, do writers bear responsibility? Yeah. I mean, you know, like, I got to build an airport. I don't have any hand in designing anything. They tell me to put these wires here. I put these wires here. They tell me to put these fixtures. I put these fixtures here. Do I want a job? Yeah, I got, you know, until I become financially independent, I got to do what my boss says. If I got hired to work for Marvel Comics, I don't know how Marvel Comics works, but it used to be pitched an idea, and as long as it sold, they left you alone. But these days, I'm sure the editors tell you, this is what we want. This is what you do. And like, I'll have a hard time believing that these people are comic book long-term comic fans.
I'll give you an instead of a 50-50 split, I'll give you an 80-20 split. Because I'm sorry, even if they were giving these horrible ideas to run with, a lot of the writing still sucks. I mean, we're not getting great dialogue.
I don't know if you could see, but the book Armor is on the shelf over here. My friend Mike gave it to me. I haven't read it yet, but it's somewhere over here.
I haven't read it yet either, but I am definitely going to look for it now. I could probably get it at a library.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I get a lot of my comics and my manga just through the library system these days.
Why not? It's cheaper. But I thought Hollywood always did it, but I don't know. yes. You know, writers like Dan Slott. Yeah, I'm sure he could take the blame, but like, I don't know. If you hire, I'm trying to think.
I don't want to see Superman. I don't want to see a book about Superman's gay son having problems with his boyfriends. But even if that was the thing that was given to them, they could have had better dialogue between the boyfriend and the new super. Because like, I'm sorry, their conversations were awful.
But you know, the way I look at it is, okay, so I'm at work, I run the pipe, I pull the wires, I splice it together, turn on the switch, the light explodes. That's still my foreman's fault. You know what I mean? It's still my foreman's fault. Yes, it's my fault, but it's ultimately he's the guy who's paid to oversee the job. It's that person's fault. Yes, I could get fired, but I don't get sued.
No, that's true. That's true. The editor should be saying this dialogue stuff.
Like, this dialogue's garbage. You know what I mean? Like, you know, everything that happened to the X-Men, it's that, what's that guy's name? I can't even think of his name. It's the editor's fault. You know, the writer is just, I don't know, some asshole who thinks it's fun to write X-Men comic books. And I guarantee you, Matt Byer and I always say, like, I'm running Marvel Comics. Tiny, you come up to me, you're like, I want to write the X-Men. My first question is, show me your record, show me your comic collection. You know, you better pull out a picture. And I'm not talking to Comixology, digital. I want to see dog-eared old comic books, out, you know, boxes, things like that. You know, and if you can't do that, then I'm like, well, we're going to have a comic book conversation, and we're going to talk about stories, and we're going to talk about characters. And if you, sorry, I don't care what college you went to. I don't care how passionate you are. If you don't know these characters, you can't come back in 5 years after reading X-Men. You know.
Well, there is also, I didn't know this. Literally up until just like a couple years ago, I didn't know that there were novels connected to the comics. Like there are Spider-Man novels and there are other novels. And the only reason I learned it is because one of my absolute favorite urban fantasy authors wrote a Spider-Man story. And I honestly think it's one of the best Spider-Man stories I've read in or seen in decades. His name, Jim Butcher, and it's Dark Days, I think is the name of it. Spider-Man Dark Days.
He does the my friend just told he does the Dresden File books.
Yep. Oh god, I love the Dresden File books so much.
Yeah, and he told me he writes a Spider-Man novel, and I was like, oh, I think you got the author mixed up. And he was like, no,
it's Jim Butcher. And that book, it's not that long. That book is amazing.
Is it new?
And in some ways, it's everything that people have been bitching that doesn't exist anymore. He's back with MJ. She has a career. He's doing his thing, trying to make it work. All this stuff, and there's all these little jokes that like fans would understand or know and stuff. Like at one point,
yeah, well, he's a big comic book fan.
Well, I don't mind. I'm gonna spoil some stuff if that's okay. At one point, Rhino gets blinded, and Peter actually decides to take care of him. And eventually, Rhino goes, "They're sitting in Aunt May's fucking like living room," and Rhino goes, "This must be your lair." And Peter goes, "What?" He goes, Mysterio and I, we always used to talk. You must have a big lair somewhere in New York where you keep all of your stuff. And he's talking about how, like, he's basically talking about the Batcave. And they're sitting there on Aunt May's fucking couch. Yeah, has no idea where he is.
To the left, yeah. Newer by Butcher, because, you know, what did he just take time off from writing Dresden Files to write a Spider-Man novel?
Basically, yeah.
Cool.
He's a big comic book geek himself. I've actually met him.
Yeah,
he's a big comic book geek himself.
I've emailed him a few times, and he said, "Nah, he's not interested in coming on my channel." But I would have loved to have talked to him. That
would be cool. I don't think he's even been on any of the Dresden File channels.
Yeah, I don't take it personal. Who the hell am I? You know.
But he tells a bunch of great stories. He's a great storyteller, even in person. But he's a fan who grew up with classic Peter Parker, and he wants to see what happens with Peter Parker going forward. He doesn't care about Miles Morales, and he, along with me, and I think most legit Marvel fans, hate what is it? When Mephisto shows up and destroys the wedding.
Mephisto?
Is it Mephisto who shows up? Who destroyed, like when Peter and Mary Jane get married, but then someone shows up and destroys it, and then they're not married and like they're not together anymore. And
yeah, but one more day, you know.
One more day, that's what it was.
Yeah, that was Mephisto. Basically, he makes a deal with the devil. You know, Aunt May's gonna die, and I get mad at that story and believe because like classic Aunt May's in her 90s. She's supposed to die. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, but like if my mom was in my 90s and like you make a vow to your wife, you know what I mean? Like that story could only be written by a single person or a guy who went through a bitter divorce. You know what I mean? Like a happily married guy would never write that story. Like, sorry, but my 95-year-old grandmother is going to die. What's that?
I said also someone who isn't Eastern European. My mom told me an Eastern European children's story, a folktale when I was younger, and I realized I never ever want to learn another one ever again. Which is there's a mommy bird and she has 3 baby birds, and she takes one baby bird and she flies it across the river to the next place to get food or whatever. And she says when they're flying, she goes, "When I'm old, will you fly me across the river?" And the baby bird says, "Of course, mommy, I love you." And she drops the baby bird in the water and drowns. She goes and gets the second baby bird, flying across. "Will you fly me across when I'm old?" "Of course, mommy, I love you." She drops the second baby bird in the water and it drowns. Third baby bird, "Will you fly me across the river when I'm old?" "I'd love to, mommy, but I'm going to have my own baby birds I have to take care of. I can't fly you." And the mother takes it all the way to the other side and it lives and grows up. That's a children's fucking tale.
I like what Master Hobo says. Even Aunt May would have told him not to take that deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was just like, it's the deal didn't really make sense, and destroying the relationship between Peter and MJ was just obnoxious.
Look at the Marvel staff. How many of them are married? You know, it's all a bunch of single, childless weirdos. But like, if I was to write Spider-Man, the story that I would tell is he gets married, he marries Mary Jane. Mary Jane gets pregnant, the baby's born, Aunt May gets to see the baby, then the baby gets diagnosed with something really bad because of the radioactivity in Peter's blood, some sort of rare blood disease, and Aunt May dies, and now Peter, in the middle of fighting Dr. Octopus, he has to leave to get the medicine to the new baby. So it's the illusion of change. It's the same weakness. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, is responsible for something that can't take care of itself, except instead of being the child, you know, taking care of the adult, now he's the adult taking care of a child. And it's the same thing. Little baby May has a blood disease, and Mary Jane's at home, and Peter's swinging through the town, and the Rhino attacks, and he has to, oh my God, I got to deal with the Rhino, but I got to get the medicine home for a little bit, you know, and
that could work. Absolutely.
We let Mary Aunt May go away. Sorry, but you know, Gwen Stacy died, supposedly stayed dead. Uncle Ben is dead. You know, let May go. But it's the same weakness. Like,
yeah, I get that.
Responsible for something.
There was someone, I think it was a Superman writer, who was interviewed, and they said, "Why don't you ever let such and such happen?" He goes, "Because superheroes that are truly happy are boring."
Yeah,
what?
Then I'm glad you're not writing them.
I was like, I thought it was a completely obnoxious statement, and then I look back on, especially the last 20 years of comics, like, no, they really do not want any of the great heroes to ever be happy.
I'm a childless weirdo, so you know. I don't have any kids, but you know what I'm saying. Like these,
yeah.
Like I've had friends that like we'd be in a restaurant and a baby would cry, and they'd be like, and I'd be like, dude, hating children is not an admirable quality to have in a person.
Not at all.
Kids.
You don't have to. I mean, not everybody loves babies. I get that. Not everybody loves babies, but you have to at least like babies.
I'm at that stage in my life now that me and my wife, we send each other cat videos. Last night, I get a video right before going to bed. It says good night, and then boom, Instagram, and I click on it, and it's babies sneezing, and I watched that video 4 times, little like infants. You know? Logic's finest. That's a well thought idea. The Chernobyl mothers lived because the unborn babies absorbed their radiation from them. And oh my God, oh my God, that's a superhero story. Oh my God, that's horrible. And
it sounds like a superhero origin story.
Oh my God,
a villain origin story.
And Logic's always right. So oh my God, that is awesome. Not awesome, you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of, I had it. I'm not going to share this idea because I don't want anybody to steal this idea. But you ever get an idea that I couldn't sleep the other night? I stayed up to 4 o'clock in the morning, like formulating an idea for comic, to the point that I was rewriting the script to incorporate this idea. I don't know. What I'm saying about Marvel is, she's moving, ladies and gentlemen. It's all a fraud. She could get out of the wheelchair.
All of these loose papers, all of this is filled completely with ideas that I couldn't get out of my head, or I thought were really great ideas, but I didn't have the energy or whatever to get them done. This whole book.
Are you writing a comic script or a novel or anything? Your father's a novelist, you said, right? You don't
no, he was a lighting director. My grandfather was very good friends with Heinlein, and he wrote but they weren't novels. They were actual like treatises on like. He was one of the preeminent futurists. He started the Hudson Institute, which was the first non-governmental think tank. And so he wrote, but he wasn't a novelist.
Okay.
None of it was fiction.
Okay. I was thinking like my way to fix Marvel. I told the story. Oh, there you go. Thinking I would fix Marvel with this story. It would be literally Carol Danvers. You know, for years they were drawing her more and more mannish. You know, yeah. they were calling her Carol Manvers. Now, if you know her origin, she was there in 1968 in the first Captain Marvel comic. So this is, you know, calling her Captain Marvel doesn't really bother me because the character put in the time.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't just make Kamala Khan and then call her Captain Marvel. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No. She was connected to Marvel. She was in the comics from the beginning. She was Ms. Marvel for a long time.
Right.
And then eventually became Captain Marvel.
Right. Like that doesn't really bother me. But but her origin is they I forget who it was, John Rogg or whatever, donated the Omni Wave device, and Captain Marvel jumped in front of it. He got hit with the radiation, and then the radiation went through him and altered her DNA. So now she has Kree DNA, and now she has similar powers to Captain Marvel, but different. Because Captain Marvel is, you know, she had like that seventh sense where Captain Marvel had the cosmic awareness. So it's similar but different. So now they're drawing her to look more and more mannish. So commit to the bit. So every once in a while, they're like, we notice that sometimes, like at certain phases of the moon or whatever politically correct, you look more mannish, and now you're a hot chick again. But sometimes you got the pronounced, and she's like, you notice that too? You know, so Reed Richards studies her. She has two sets of DNA. She literally has Carol Danvers' DNA and she has Mar-Vell's DNA. And they're like, basically, you're going to die. This is like cancer, kind of. Like, we got to treat this. So they literally remove one set of DNA, and now they have a clone of Mar-Vell. So Captain Mar-Vell comes back in my story, but he doesn't have the memories. And now she a brand new tabula rasa, and she feels responsible, like it's her kid or her sibling or whatever. And he has all the powers and he's like, tell me about this Captain Marvel and stuff. And now he's getting his cosmic awareness starts to kick in, and he's just like, how come everybody has these waves hitting them? Like, what? She's like, what are you talking about? These rays. Like, I could see these radiation waves or you know, because I have the cosmic awareness, everybody has these rays. And she's like, and Reed Richards is like, what are you talking about? He's like, you have it, and then they fly and they come to this basic underground bunker. And there was an old Captain America story called Mad Bombs, you know, and there was one bomb was powerful enough to make everybody in a city block crazy. And the second bomb was big enough to make everybody in a state crazy. And the third bomb was big enough to make everybody in a continent crazy. And that was the end of Captain America. But the fourth bomb made the entire planet crazy. And Captain Mar-Vell, like, with the exception of like guys like Ghost Rider, you know, these, you know, guys that like can't be influenced by psychology or whatever. So he dismantles the bomb, and now everybody's just like, the X-Men are like, were we like mutant supremacists on an island for 5 years? Like, they all start to recognize that they have
none of this makes any sense. None of this is who we are.
And Bobby Drake just goes, Jean Grey made me gay. Like, they all start realizing all of the, like, and now they all have to live with the fact that they were manipulated. Like, some of them don't trust each other, and like, we got to make it right. Like,
that would be crazy. That would be, and then it would finally like, oh wow, that would be a great way to save Marvel. That would be an amazing way to save
Captain Marvel back, so he could be Captain Marvel. She could go back to being Miss Marvel. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? And you get a classic character.
Or she gets another name that's not based on Marvel.
Yeah, call her Miss Marvel. Why not? Tell Kamala Khan to get a new name. You know, let her get a new name. Marvel Girl. She can become Marvel.
It was a little tiny bit, just the slight semi little tiny bit of feminist in me. I don't really like calling her Miss Marvel because it sounds like when they made fucking Barbara Batgirl again. She's a full grown mature woman. Let's give her a different name. Let's not call her girl. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Can we compromise that she goes back to the sexy black?
Oh, hell yeah. That was such a better costume. And I always loved the complete unreality of her sash, which is always at an angle and never falls off.
Yeah, well, that's unstable molecules. There you go. Unstable molecule. That's the way they work.
Yeah, that costume was so much better.
Yeah.
That's what they want to bring. They're planning to bring in the X-Men. And supposedly they want to bring in the X-Men more traditional than the way the X-Men were brought in the movie. So, like, Rogue's going to be Rogue. So, how would she be Rogue if she hasn't fucking almost killed Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel?
Yeah.
Her powers come from Ms. Marvel.
Right. I'm of the opinion that she should lose the Captain Marvel powers, and just because it dilutes what makes her Rogue. Like, it's like, okay, I'm Wolverine, I have claws, and I also burst into flame like the Human Torch. Like, Rogue powers are that she's apart from everybody else, because if she has human contact, she basically kills them or steals their essence, and
Yeah.
that's what it's a cool power by itself. And then she could touch the fact that
I mean,
she's
but
now
for me, I grew up with the Rogue from like the
Warbird.
95
Yeah, I did it
version.
correct, Master Hobo. She was Warbird.
There you go. I'd be more than happy with her.
You know, I said keep her as Captain. Put her in the sexy costume again. She could be Captain Marvel, and then the new clone, he could be Mr.
Just
Marvel
Marvel or something else.
or,
That
or,
works.
or Marvel Man. You know,
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with all that.
Because he's just like, no, I'm not Captain Marvel. You know, like,
yeah, I'm not that man. I'm a different being.
You know, I'm something else. Like almost like I'm Athena, born fully from your head.
Yep.
You know? Give me my own. Like I could see that, because there's nothing like twins who fight so hard to differentiate themselves. You know what I mean? So he would just like,
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Logic's finest. You actually blew my mind with this. That's why I love his comments. John, look up Chernobyl Hot. It said what happened to the babies who were unborn when the plant exploded. Those who actually lived were deformed and had new hearts. Oh my God. I kind of want to look it up, but I kind of don't want to look it up. I tell you, my father said this to me as a kid. He goes, I can watch horror movies, but when things happen to children or babies, I can't deal with it. And I've become that guy. You know, my wife was telling me about the hostages in Israel, about Hamas. I said, nope, we're not having this conversation. I know it's out there. I know it's bad. I don't ever want to talk about it.
But I mean, to go back to Rogue though, like I grew up with the Rogue that was the Rogue from the early to mid 90s, the one that was ended up in the animated series, who could fly and beat the living shit out of everybody. Like I loved that version of Rogue, but she still couldn't touch anyone, and she still had to be separate. So I think she had both aspects. Yeah,
who dressed inappropriately, like she's always in a bikini. With those powers, she should be
dressed. No. The Rogue I'm talking about never wore a bikini.
I'm joking. Oh. You always, there was always like back in
Starfire that they put in a bikini.
Well, yeah, but
oh God, Red Hood and the Outlaws, that cover. I'm sorry, I'm perfectly fine with most with TNA in a lot of my comics. That cover was kind of ridiculous.
Which cover are you talking about?
New 52, #1, Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Oh, okay.
They have her in a tiny bikini, full. The whole fucking cover is just her covered in water, coming out of the water with her hair going back. And she talks about, I mean, like, Tamarinians are very different from us in that they kiss someone to learn their language. They're much more touchy-feely. They're much more into intimacy to stuff. But she acted like they turned her from someone who had a deep sexual relationship with Dick Grayson, and I'm forgetting the other person, into someone who's basically just a gorgeous bimbo sex bot.
Yeah. And don't forget their solar powers, so they need to have their skin exposed.
See, the one thing that the same time that cover came out and became like a scandal, they did the Batman Catwoman, where Batman and Catwoman have sex on a roof.
Yeah.
And everyone was mad at that as too, like, she's fucking sitting on him. She has mounted his ass. And in the comic, it says he always tries to say no, but I win in the end. Meaning she's fucked him on rooftops before.
Yep.
This is not him forcing himself on Catwoman. She's fucking mounted him. Like
I'm trying to.
There are things that can go too far, and it can be like, that's not really right.
Well, I said this before with Chuck Dixon. Like, you bend the characters, you don't break them.
Exactly.
Ultimately, you got to put them back on the shelf for other characters to you know. Like,
there's the feminists that get crazy about some of this stuff drive me nuts, because half the time there's one small kernel of truth in what they're getting upset about, and it's so hard to just parcel out that little piece from all the insanity.
What comic was it? Outsiders.
Red Hood and the Outsiders, I think.
Okay.
No, Red Hood and the Outlaws. Red Hood and something.
Red Hood. Yeah, I'm just looking it up. I remember it vaguely, but I don't remember it being that bad. Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Look, if it had been a Fathom comic from Top Cow, I wouldn't have had a problem. That bitch is made out of water, and she's always in a bikini. I don't have a problem with that. It's part of her character. Starfire isn't always in a bikini, especially a tiny bikini, and she doesn't talk about sex like it doesn't matter to her, and she'll sleep with anyone.
Yeah, I remember that.
Honestly, I think the conversation upset me even more than the image, but the image and the conversation kind of went together.
Is this the one you talk about?
Nope.
No,
That's
yeah,
actually not, that's not awful.
yeah. I'm
Hold on,
trying to
I'll
find the
see if
one
I
that.
can find it. It's just it was. If you had told me it was for the comic book edition of Playboy, I'd have believed you.
Yeah, I remember because I quit DC with the New 52. I was like, this is a great jumping off point.
Yeah.
But I get my comics from a discount comic book service, and for $79, you got everything by DC. So I was like,
Oh
all right.
wow.
So I saw, and it lasted 19 months because I have up to 19 of all the New 52. So I remember, I remember getting those, and I probably never would have thought of it again, but I just remember her being like, she's not a floozy. You know,
No.
like when she first showed up, she has a horrible story. She was a sex slave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She was captured by the Gordian slavers. You know, she was a sex slave. She was liberated. Like, and her people.
She's experimented on.
She was experimented on by her sister. Her sister turned her in. You know.
Yep.
Like she has a really tragic past, and then she was always sexy and like they did the same thing with Storm. Why am I wearing these ridiculous clothes when they're all swimming? You know what I mean? Because it's supposed to be she grew up like in the jungles of Africa or whatever. But whatever. They always did the same thing with these like exotic women. But like she was never like, I'm just gonna go gangbang everybody. I'm just gonna have sex with, you know. She was never like a porno.
And she's never flippant about her relationship with Dick.
I think. Well,
maybe it wasn't the cover. Maybe it was like the first or second page.
Their relationship with Dick. Superman has the red underwear on the outside. Absolutely. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Superman's supposed to have underwear on the outside. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't find it. And maybe it wasn't the cover. Maybe it was like the first page or something.
Yeah.
But it was very, very in the very beginning of that book.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been talking for 2.5 hours.
Since it came up, gotta ask the question.
What?
Dick Grayson with Barbara Gordon or with Starfire?
You know what's funny? I think about that more than I should. That's definitely a nerdy question. I remember I remember the panel that everybody talked about in the new Teen Titans. Well, I forget what the actual situation was, but there was a storm. Maybe it was Raven going nuts or something like that. Mm-hmm. And Starfire jumps out of bed, and she's clearly naked, holding the blanket, and there's Dick Grayson in bed with her. And they didn't dwell on it. That was just it. You know,
it was.
And I always thought, okay, this is a Batman, and like his Robin. This is all American Pie. This is like Americana classic. Like he can't have a lasting relationship with the space alien. Like I don't know. It just didn't seem right. So
Lois Lane did.
What's that?
I said Lois Lane did.
Yeah, I didn't say it made sense. I didn't say it made sense, but it was just like, like my point being, it's like he's grounded. To me, Batman works best as a detective, noir stories. Like Batman and Robin are stopping like a kidnapping ring, and they're fighting some guy in an old wrinkled suit who's carrying a snub nose revolver. That's my Batman. Okay. That Batman doesn't deal with space aliens and you know, and other dimensional beings and wizards.
Got it.
You know, so to me, Robin should be more grounded too. So that's just it. Like I don't know. Like to me, the Batman that's in the Justice League is almost a different character than the Batman that's fighting a.
I can see that.
You know,
I don't necessarily agree, but I can see it.
yeah. So there you go. There's a long-winded answer to my question. I wear the underwear on the outside so people could be absolutely 100% sure that I'm wearing clean underwear.
There you go.
Wolverine, yellow suit or brown suit?
I love the classic yellow suit, but it never really made sense in any shape or form if he's going to be blending in or being stealthy or whatever. The brown suit makes more sense, but I love the yellow suit because that's what I originally saw him in, and that's classic for me.
Yeah, I was there on day one with the yellow suit, but I've grown to like the brown suit better.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the brown suit. I think it makes more sense in a lot of ways. But
yeah, I grew to like the brown suit. I just love that classic, just that triangle down. It's just a good superhero costume.
I love Storm with the mohawk. She's one of the she's one of the characters that made me feel confident cutting my hair in high school when I joined the wrestling team, and I had a braid that went down to my back. And so I love Storm with Mohawk, but she looks more mature and beautiful and elegant with the longer hair. I love it with the Mohawk, and when she had the leather vest jacket thingy, and she had the slight little spikies, and she was very, very punk. I loved that version of Storm. But for me, Storm should really be probably in her 30s, mature, slightly regal even.
Yeah, I love the long flowing hair. The John Byrne version to me is still my favorite. I did like the fact that like she was so connected to the Earth that when she went into space, you know, people forget that the X-Men had like space adventures.
A whole bunch of them.
You know, they went into space and fought alongside Empress Leandra, who had a lightsaber.
For the Shi'ar, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't always mutant dread. Oh, nobody likes us. You know, there was a lot of cool. And then when she came back, like she lost her mind a bit because she's so connected that she became this punk thing. The problem was I was a punk rock kid, and even at that time, punk was over. By the time the comic books are catching on a trend, they're about 7 or 8 years too late. You know, it would be like, I don't know, like all of a sudden Connor Kent becomes a hipster. It's like, dude, you become a hipster. It's over with, you know. Yeah, you got to vote to be my new co-host. There you go. Tiny, Angel or Archangel?
I like the way Angel looks better, but he's too much of a whiny bitch. Archangel at least has his spine and his balls, so I'll stick with Archangel.
Yeah, I like
Warren just bitches too much.
Yeah,
and out of all the abilities you could have, you've got gorgeous fucking angel wings. You're not a Morlock. You don't spit acid. You can't not touch people. Stop bitching.
Right. You got cool wings. You're rich and you're handsome. Shut up. You're not Scott Summers, who can't even open his eyes without killing people. I've always had sympathy.
You're not Rogue.
You know, like Black Bolt and Cyclops. I've always had things for those kind of characters who they couldn't, like, they had to be self-restrained because they were just burdened with responsibility, like Rogue too. You know, like, I don't know. It still takes it away that Rogue's invulnerable. She flies, like she's Supergirl with an added power. I still like Rogue better just with the Rogue powers. It's not underwear if you wear it on the outside. Can't argue. That's flawless logic. Angel is filthy. Yeah. You know, he's got the hot chicks, you know. Spider-Man blue suit.
Psylocke.
What's that?
Warren had Psylocke.
Yeah. So
he's always considered one of the hottest women in all of comic books.
Who is a British girl
inside the body of an Asian woman.
Turned Japanese because of fetish reasons. Yeah. Spider-Man, the classic Ditko. And I even love the webbing under the arms. Classic Ditko. To the point where I threatened to quit all of comic books when they put Spider-Man in the black outfit.
I would agree with that.
Tiny, you're awesome. I talk comics with you every day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Oh, here's another thing. If I was writing the X-Men, I would do this. Somebody needs to explore the fact that all of Cyclops' girlfriends are telepaths.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's true.
So this is that Cyclops is he's so restrained and he's so terrified of his own power, and with just reason, that he can't open up to anybody. So think of it. His father figure, telepath.
Yep.
His first wife, telepath.
When she cheated on him with, telepath.
Yeah, telepath. I think he was with Psylocke for a little while. Telepath. You know, he ain't dating Storm. You know, he ain't dating Spider-Woman. He's dating So I would like, this is a guy that just can't open up to anybody because
when I was younger, I honestly did not like Cyclops very much. My attitude was he was a Boy Scout with a stick up his ass.
Right.
As I got older and I kind of understood where the stick up his ass comes from, I've been able to have a lot more respect for the character.
Yeah, just imagine that your hands were guns that, like, if you fell asleep, they started shooting. You know, I also, contrary to, you know, my it's like mutants deserve every ounce of persecution they get. They are the worst. Just imagine, like, you know, I'm going to make up an ethnic group. You know, the the Botsvanians, everybody persecutes us, and then they turn around and start shooting in the streets, starting fires, throwing firecrackers. Stop persecuting us. Like, mutants are the worst. They're horrible. They cause all the problems. When they finally get arrested, they break each other out of jail. But we just want to be treated like everybody else. I want like the Avengers just to beat up the X-Men and like make them pay.
Wasn't there an Avengers versus X-Men?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't dream that, did I?
There was two, like when Excalibur, X-Force #1, when Scott Summers became a deadbeat dad, that irreversibly damaged the character. And then in X-Men 200, when Magneto was standing trial for his crimes, the X-Men break him out. I was like, I'm done. I weaned myself to the X-Men, and it's funny. I quit the X-Men like before they became like the big Jim Lee X-Men stuff. I've since bought all those comics because I'm out of my mind, but I don't consider like me collecting the X-Men at those comics. That was just me, buying comics.
That makes sense. And yeah. I promise I will literally get off here. I will go on my phone. I will look in the library. If I can get it, I will get it immediately. Otherwise, I'll put it on my list of things I really want to check out.
What's that?
Armor, but
yeah.
By John.
I'm a walking contradiction. Spider-Man's my favorite character, but I absolutely love it. I got to say that the black suit grew on me, just like when John Byrne took over the Fantastic Four and he inverted their costumes. They were the light blue with the black, and then they had the white collar with the dark. Just like Doctor Who. Every time they change the Doctor, I hate the Doctor, and then I grow to like him. I don't take to change too well.
I don't take to change too well either. I have to admit, the black costume just feels. It wouldn't bother me if he was wearing the black costume when in books where he's older, but when he's young, like the youthfulness of the blue and the red and the brightness, and I like that for a young Spider-Man.
I don't know. I just think that is perhaps the greatest comic book costume design of all time. It kind of breaks my rules of simple and elegant, but there really is not a wasted line. It's webbing. It's too. Yeah. It's so good.
It does make there was a cartoon that was done, Ultimate Spider-Man or something like that, where they basically just played around and was very new age, but there was some fun stuff. And they're at he's at a Shield Academy with a whole bunch of other characters, and Deadpool shows up and he just starts making fun of him for trying to copy his costume. Watching Deadpool try to knock on Spider-Man for copying his costume was just hilarious to me.
I hate Deadpool. I hate Deadpool. I hate Cable. I hate all the Rob Liefeld creations.
I was not as big a Cable fan as many were when Cable came out and got really big, but I don't hate him.
Cable's a sci-fi character, not a superhero character.
Michael Turner is my favorite comic book artist, and if not him, then he's got an Eastern European name I can never pronounce, but he did Aphrodite 9 and a couple other books that I really liked. Stephen Jack.
Yeah, I know he's saying. I can't pronounce his name either.
Those two are my favorite modern artists. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Going back to the very, very classic, Kirby.
I gotta go. Like I've passed the point of hunger to the point of sleepy.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. We should go.
No. I'm enjoying this. This is fun. But yeah, it's funny because I was literally had the mouse over the end stream button, and then you started, and then somebody asked you a question. So tomorrow I will have Sandy Peterson on at 7:00. If you don't know, he's an acclaimed board game designer. I think he wrote some of the story for Doom, the video game. But I know him as like he did a lot of Cthulhu games that I absolutely love. He's in Peterson Games, and then at 8:30 we're gonna do classic X-Men. Like if John Byrne didn't draw, they're not part of it, and classic Teen Titans. If Perez didn't draw, they're not. So it's going to be the classic Teen Titans versus the classic X-Men in It's Clobber Time. Open invite for anybody to pop in and argue friendly about that stuff. But I'm going to get going. So see you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure being here. Bye, chat.
Bye-bye. So long. Thanks for the fish. I'm starving as well. Yeah, I passed the point of hunger to the point of tired. Bye-bye, everybody.